some day one stuff that I didn't discuss last night. Hopefully you guys are checking out the content on the channel, the individual videos that I've discussed the last couple of days. Grunt, spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe and don't be a jabroni. Check out the Discord, guys. If you want a great NFL chat, the Bottom Line View Discord is free. So check it out. Link in the description. Hop in the comments and let me know what you guys thought of free agency day 2. Let's get started. We're going to break down all the news from today. I'm not sure if I should start with DeAndre Hopkins because I want to see if we can get some people in the chat before I go there, because I know DeAndre Hopkins is probably the biggest signing of the day. But I do want to start with a big one. So maybe we could start, and Big Al's in the chat. He says, "What's cracking, Mitch?" What's up, Big Al? What's up, bro? How you doing? Should I start with D-Hop? What do you think, bro? Big Al, what do you think? Let me know in the chat. D-Hop signed with the Ravens in the long line of veteran receivers to go to the Ravens. Maybe we should start with D-Hop. All right, let's do it. Why not? Hopefully some people start joining. Let's start. Okay. The Baltimore Ravens have a new weapon for Lamar Jackson. His name, you might have heard of him. It's DeAndre Hopkins. D-Hop will be a Baltimore Raven. He signed a 1-year, $6 million deal with the Baltimore Ravens. A 5-time All-Pro wide receiver. Was with the Chiefs last season. Traded to the Chiefs, actually, last season. Was on the Titans and the Chiefs last season. And a former great of the Houston Texans, of course. You guys know DeAndre Hopkins. I don't need to tell you who he is. He is 32 years old. He's turning 33 years old. Now, the question is, does he have anything left? Does he have anything left in those legs? Does he have any magic left in those hands to be able to help Lamar Jackson capture the Lombardi Trophy, which is what Lamar Jackson is chasing? The elusive Lombardi, okay? 1 year, $6 million. Pretty good deal for the Ravens. That being said, I don't think DeAndre Hopkins has much left. Last season, he had 56 catches in 16 games played for 610 yards and 5 touchdowns. That was his worst season of his career. Previously, he had a 572-yard season with Arizona in 10 games, 717 yards in Arizona in 9 games. That was actually, pretty good. Other than the seasons that he's been injured, this was the worst season. Now, I will say with D-Hop, he did enter the season with a serious injury. So the question is, will he be fresher and healthier come 2025? Will his lower body be fresher? Because entering the season, he had a little bit of I want to say it was something to do with his MCL. I'm not sure if it was torn, but it was at least sprained. He was out for a few weeks during training camp, and I'm actually going to look that up for you guys right now, because I feel like he had an MCL. He might have had an MCL tear. So he suffered a torn MCL on July 31st, and that kept him out of training camp. That was last year before the season. And I don't know if that's still affecting him or not. I don't know if that will further affect him into 2025. You would think taking some time off of it this offseason, being able to rehab that injury, being able to recoup, right? Hopefully he's fully over that injury by the time 2025 hits. But clearly we saw him in Tennessee and Kansas City, and he didn't have any legs left. He didn't have any explosiveness, any speed. Even quickness was not quite there for DeAndre Hopkins. Now, what you can still rely on is his size, is his smarts, and is his hands. Even with some of the drops he did have with the Chiefs late last season, that's very rare for DeAndre Hopkins, right? Some concentration drops. Part of that is confidence. Part of that is comfort in an offense with the Chiefs. And it felt like he never quite found his way. He had a nice little debut. He had a couple nice little games for himself as a complimentary option, but he never really became anything in Kansas City. In Baltimore, what they're going to really look for him to be is the third receiver and potentially the fifth receiving option. If you're going through it in Baltimore's mind, okay, you've got Zay Flowers, a Pro Bowl wide receiver, Mark Andrews, who's coming off a great season despite the drop against the Bills, Isaiah Likely, who's also really talented tight end. He can play inside, he can play on the line. You've got Rashad Bateman, who turned into a great deep threat for them last year. So can D-Hop offer a little inside-outside versatility? Maybe even play a little bit more in the slot this year and be that guy that can find the voids in the zone. And the thing about D-Hop playing in Baltimore is that he, despite his age and despite his lack of explosiveness, when you play in Baltimore, you don't see as much man coverage because Lamar is dangerous when he takes off. You have to contain him. You have to be aware of Lamar Jackson. So D-Hop probably struggles a little bit to separate. But finding those soft spots in the zone, he has no problems with. Right? So the savviness and the veteran savvy can come in handy against a lot of zone coverage that he'll be facing in Baltimore. Okay? Last year, he actually did grade pretty well. He was the 26th best receiver in football according to PFF, which I honestly do not believe. That's kind of crazy, in my opinion. I think that's way too high. The year previous, 18th. The year previous to that, 33rd. So he hasn't really been himself for a while. Like if you're looking at the grading. 2021, he was 15th, which is a little bit closer to what he used to be. But his prime, he was 12th, 4th, 1st, 5th, 7th. Okay? So he was an elite player during his prime. One of the best receivers in football, 5-time All-Pro. Not quite that player anymore. Hasn't been that player for a while. But last year in particular, it felt like he lost some gas. He lost some steam. Diving into some of his numbers last year, he played 74.7% of his snaps out wide. Okay, 327 snaps out wide, only 25% of his snaps in the slot. I'd be intrigued to see if he does play more in the slot in Baltimore because Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman can play outside. So that will be interesting. But you would like to be able to also have a guy that can move outside so that Zay can move inside a little bit. Shout out to Chiefs fan in the chat from Australia. Shout out to you, man. 1.61 yards per route run from D-Hop last year, which was actually slightly higher than Worthy last season for the Chiefs. Okay? But his yak was extremely low. He had 1.9 yak per reception. Okay? Which is really low. I mean, that is one of the worst in the league. It has to be. That's 189th out of 199 receivers. So yeah, that's really low. All right. He did have 38 first downs, which was 37th in football. And if you're looking at his splits between Tennessee and Kansas City, he did average more yards per game in Kansas City, more receptions in Kansas City, a higher and a higher overall production rate. But, I mean, that's compared to Tennessee with Will Levis. So it's not really... He only had one touchdown before he got to Kansas City. So he was kind of struggling in both places in both offenses. But yeah, it's only $6 million on a one-year contract. And as a third receiver, you can certainly do worse. I will say, out of the recent veteran receivers that the Ravens have signed when it comes to like OBJ. It's a similar capacity to OBJ, like a similar role, but they didn't sign D-Hop to nearly as much money. Like Odell got way more money than D-Hop got. They signed Des Bryant once upon a time, like those type of guys. Like he's in that same lane, but he's not going to have to be relied upon in the same way, which is nice. So as a third receiver, I don't hate it. It's a big name, so don't just fall for the big name, because the big name does not bring the big outcome or the big production anymore. So those are my thoughts on D-Hop to the Ravens. I think it's a fine move. It's not a crazy contract. It's a 1-year deal. He's a guy that has some hunger to him. He wants to win a championship. That's why he went to Kansas City last year. Got a disappointing result. And the upside does exist with DeAndre Hopkins, where it's like, maybe that torn MCL, he's fully recovered and you could actually get a better player than he was last year. Especially if he decides to move to the inside in the slot more than he did previously, because that could be the role where he really thrives, because he doesn't have that vertical speed to run by people on the outside anymore. So putting him in the inside gives him the best chance to be shifty and to find the soft spots for Lamar Jackson. But I don't mind the signing at all. Gronk, spike the like button, guys, if you're joining me live here. Don't forget it. It definitely helps the channel. It helps the video. It helps more people find this content live and after we're live. Also, hop in the chat. Let me know how you're doing, how you're feeling, what you're thinking about your favorite team signings. Thank you guys for tuning in. Okay, let's get to some of the other signings. So we broke down the Ravens and DeAndre Hopkins. Let's get to another big signing. The Saints signed Justin Reid, so we're going to talk about that next. My favorite team is the Patriots, if you can tell by my background. Usually, some people ask, some people think it's obvious, but I guess it's not obvious enough. I'm also wearing a Patriots shirt. Brandon says, you got to change your name to Eagles fan from Australia now. That's not very nice. What are you doing, bro? That's not very nice. Why you do that? All right, let's get the Justin Reid stats. And if you guys have never joined me live for these things, usually what I do is I do one signing, I bring up all the stats, then I do the next signing. We'll have timestamps after we are live so that you guys can check it out if you missed anything. Okay. So, Justin Reid. Let's talk about it. The New Orleans Saints have a partner for the Honey Badger, and it's actually the safety that replaced him in Kansas City. Funny enough, the Saints have signed Justin Reid, Kansas City Chiefs safety, one of the most underrated defensive players in football over the last few seasons. A huge reason the Chiefs have called themselves a dynasty, and a huge part of the Chiefs' recent defensive surge. Justin Reid reached an agreement with the Saints on a 3-year deal, $31.5 million, $22.25 million guaranteed. Reid returns home to Louisiana. Justin Reid, coming off one of the best years of his NFL career. He was graded as the 11th best safety in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus. His run defense grade was also elite last season. He was 11th in the NFL, and his coverage grade was 10th. The only area where Pro Football Focus saw him as deficient was pass rushing, where he was 20th out of 24, but they don't evaluate that many safeties pass rushing. But that just goes to show that Justin Reid is the ultimate Swiss Army knife, a lot like Tyrann Mathieu, which this could actually make Tyrann Mathieu a lot better, because at this stage of his career, he's not quite the same player in terms of that versatility or physicality. So allowing him to play further away from the ball is probably a good thing, while Justin Reid is still that physical force in the running game. He's a good cover man on tight ends, and he's also extremely savvy and smart in zone, but can play a bit of man coverage. Very good tackler as well. So he can blitz, tackle, cover, do it all, and he's a leader. He's a guy that can even kick the ball off if you want him to and kick extra points. We've seen him do that as well. Reid throughout his career has been graded 20th, 13th, 32nd, and 11th as his highs. As his lows in 2023, 79th for the Chiefs. In 2021 and 2020, 60th and 86th. So he's had some ups and some downs according to their grading, but I've always felt like he's been a good player, especially for Kansas City. He's one of those unsung players in terms of that versatility, because he's one of those guys that Spags could always ask him to do something different, whether it be contributing as a tackler against a heavy run team and playing in the box, whether it be shadowing a tight end, whether it be blitzing from the slot. Justin Reid can do a lot of different things, or even playing as a 2-deep safety. He can do that as well. Last season, 547 snaps in the box, which is the most of any alignment. 199 from the slot and 350 from free safety. So he's primarily a box safety, but still has the athleticism to flow in coverage. Okay, he's 27, turning 28 years old. 16 games, 17 games recently over the last 3 seasons. 87 tackles last year, 9 passes defensed, and not a lot of ball production. I mean, 2 picks. Like, he's not a huge interception guy. He only has 10 picks since 2018. So he's not like a huge ball production interception type of guy. He's more about the tackles. He's never had a season below 66 tackles, and he accomplished that in 13 games. So he averages around like 80 tackles. You'll see him around the ball. You'll see him making big hits. You'll see him forcing negative plays in the running game. You'll see him being a force in the running game. 6'1", 207, pretty good size to him as well. Last season, in terms of coverage statistics, he allowed a 107.3 rating in coverage, according to Pro Football Focus. And he had 20 stops in the passing game, which was actually 4th in the NFL among safeties, only behind Kyle Hamilton, Budda Baker, Derwin James, and Quentin Lake, who's actually a nickel corner, I think. So that's not really fair. But Justin Reid was only behind the elite of the elite, like Kyle Hamilton, Budda Baker, Derwin James, really good players in terms of tackling. In terms of pass play tackles, he also had 52, which was 6th in the NFL. So he more so makes an impact, not through his pure coverage. He can be taken advantage of one-on-one, but through his ability to make plays like quick tackles, quick stops, disguise coverage, things like that. And he can clog up lanes he's a guy that ran a 4.4. He's got pretty good size, pretty good range, very good versatility. So that's the player you're getting. Experienced guy, a winner, a champion, a versatile safety that can work within this new New Orleans Saints defense. Looking forward to seeing how they use him, but good for him. He got paid. He's won his championships in Kansas City. He deserved to go out in the open market. The Chiefs are going to miss him, man. This is a guy that the Chiefs are definitely going to miss. He's a guy that I think could change the way they play in the back end. Like, I think there are things that they don't mind missing about him, but I feel like his intelligence, his ability to help the defense, communicate the defense, all those things that's so important for Spags, he's going to be missed for the Chiefs. So even honestly, from an NFL landscape, probably a bigger loss for the Chiefs than it is for a gain for the Saints, because the Saints aren't really expected to be a contender, but it's a big-time loss, I think, for the Chiefs. So Justin Reid to Kansas City to New Orleans. Okay, so those are our first 2 signings I wanted to talk about. Guys, don't forget to Gronk spike the like button. I don't know if I sent this out on Twitter, so I'm going to do that real quick. What's up, Kansas City fan? Says, how's my New England Patriots doing in free agency? We talked about them plenty yesterday. They signed a ton of people yesterday, man. He has Drake May's rookie card. He's a New England fan. The quarterback's sister lives next door to my girlfriend in Newcastle. Oh, really? That's kind of cool. Can you get her on the show? Ross says, I think the Pats win between 7 and 8 games. What's up, Ross? How you doing, man? Brandon in the chat. Shout out to Brandon, the Texans fan in the chat, bro. We've got to talk about that trade for sure. We talked a ton about the Patriots yesterday. So There's nothing really to actually talk about with the Patriots today. They didn't really do anything today, which is interesting, but they signed like 6 people yesterday. So actually more than 6. More than 6. So yeah, we talked about that already. I won't be talking about the stuff I've already talked about. There's too much to talk about. So the next thing we want to discuss, let's actually talk about something I didn't talk about yesterday, which is Josh Palmer to the Bills and Mike Hoecht, I believe is how you say his name, the big defensive end from the Rams. He's going to the Bills as well. So we can talk about the Bills here real quick. Haven't talked about the Bills yet. Okay. I've got those two. Let's just get the grades here. I didn't know Drake May's sister lives in England. I did not know that. Is that a thing? Are you just lying to me? All right. Let's go with the Bills. The Buffalo Bills have made a big addition to their receiving core. One of the Mitch favorites over the last couple of years, but I was really disappointed with how he performed last year in Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman's offense. But maybe, just maybe, in Buffalo, he could have a breakout season. That's Joshua Palmer. Josh Palmer, the Los Angeles Charger, who's seen some pretty good seasons in LA, now is going to be a Buffalo Bill. He adds an interesting dimension and element to their receiving core, a potential replacement and upgrade from Mac Hollins. We'll talk about that in this video. Also, Mike Hoecht, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He is a very unique player, a player that is much larger than the average defensive end. He is a converted defensive tackle who plays a hybrid linebacker edge position. He's a DN that kind of plays like a linebacker, and there's even tape of him shadowing DK Metcalf in the slot. So this is a very unique addition to the Bills and an interesting receiver addition as well. So Palmer signed a 3-year, $36 million contract. That's where I want to start. Palmer has always been a guy that I felt like was slept on and underrated because he's had some production even as a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. The Chargers obviously had a lot of injuries at wide receiver over the years between Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And between those two guys going down, Palmer saw a surge in production at times. Like, for example, 2022, 23 years old, he had a 72 catch, 769 yard season, 3 touchdowns. He averaged 48 yards per game. And if you look at some of the games in which Keenan Allen and Mike Williams didn't play, Josh Palmer actually produced a lot. And what I like about Josh Palmer's game is his ability to be interchangeable. He can play inside, he can play outside. And that's what the Bills have kind of made a pretty big part of their offense. They like these guys that can play inside or outside. So Palmer, he can play as the X receiver on the outside of the formation, which he probably will play more often than not for the Bills and be a complement to Coleman because they drafted Coleman to be that guy. But at the same time, Coleman's tape in college was always kind of better in the slot. I will say that. He is kind of a little bit better on the inside, all right? But I will say with Palmer, he's had experience playing in the slot. He's had experience playing on the outside. And he's been very consistent over the last couple of years. But last year was actually a down season for him. He only had 584 yards, 39 catches, and 1 touchdown, which isn't awful as a complimentary receiver, but it's not what they expected or what they wanted or what I was expecting. Because the year previous, he put up 581 yards and 38 catches on 15 yards a catch in only 10 games. So he had more production in 10 games in 2023 at 24 years old than he did in 2024 at 25 years old. And he's got a good frame to him. I feel like he's got pretty good thickness. At 6'1", he feels like a guy that's more 6'2", 6'3". Kind of looks a little bit bigger than he is, I believe. 210 pounds. He's actually Canadian. He was at least born in Toronto, Ontario. So shout out to him. He also attended high school. So there it is. He attended high school. I didn't even know this. I'm Canadian myself. I didn't know that he's from Canada. So shout out to Josh Palmer. But, oh, Canada. We got our boy from Canada here going to the Bills, which makes a lot of sense too, because Toronto's favorite team is the Buffalo Bills. So that makes a lot of sense. It's very close. So, yeah, I mean, I like Palmer. I've always liked Palmer. I like his versatility. I don't think he's like the most dynamic player ever. I don't think he has the most speed I've ever seen. He's not like a huge vertical. Like, the thing is, he's not like a crazy fast guy, but the last 2 seasons, he averages 15 yards a catch. So you could say one thing about him, like he's not a guy that typically is going to be beating people down the field with speed, but he also has a yards per catch that would indicate he is a vertical player, like he's a deep of the field player. So it's kind of similar to Matt Collins, where neither of them, on the surface you would think they're deep threats, but with Palmer, it's kind of been the case. With Hollins, it's kind of been the case. Kind of similar in that regard. Palmer also involved as a blocker heavily last season with the Chargers, which is something that Hollins was asked to do a lot, and he will be asked to do. Palmer will be asked to do in Buffalo for sure, being that they like to run the ball a little bit more last year. So let's look a little bit deeper into Josh Palmer in terms of the PFF stuff, the grading and things like that. I feel like he's probably at his best as a wide receiver 3, if I were being honest with you. He graded as the 66th best receiver in football, so that's right alongside Keon Coleman at 63. That's around what Amari Cooper graded at 61, and that's above Curtis Samuel at 71. Khalil Shakir was the only good receiver that graded for the Bills last year. He was top 25. But throughout his career, he's listed around, like last year 63rd, this year 66th. So he's kind of seen as, if you're doing the math, that's a third receiver. That's a third receiver in the NFL. A high-end third receiver, I guess you would look at it that way. But yeah, 616 snaps last season. Looking at some of the in-depth stats for Mr. Palmer. Let's see. He had, what did he do? 28 first downs. What was his yards per route run? That's something I want to look at. He's not much of a yak guy from the eye test, but let's see if I'm correct about that. He played 67% of his snaps out wide, so that's probably going to be his role in Buffalo. That's what I said because it makes the most sense based on the other personnel they have. 1.49 yards per route run. It's not bad. It's not terrible. 2.6 yak per reception, which isn't great. He's probably the worst yak guy on the Bills, like 162nd in the NFL. So, yeah, not great. In terms of ADOT, that's an interesting stat for him, where his average depth of target was 15 yards downfield, which was 10th highest in the NFL. So that's also, that could be improved upon in Buffalo. Like, he could get more short receptions for sure. But yeah, the Bills bring in a bit of a deep threat there, a guy that can play on the outside, a guy that can mix in with the rest of their rotation and complement what they already have with a bit more size and a ability to play on the outside. Now, Michael Hoecht is 6'4", 267. He is an edge player who was a converted interior defensive lineman and D tackle that moved to the edge. The last 3 years, he's been a really critical part of the Rams defense that not a lot of people talk about because he provides a lot of versatility. 4.5 sacks in 2022, 6 sacks in 2023, and 3 sacks in 2024. Now, because of the surge from the younger players in the front seven of the Rams, he saw some lesser snaps last year, but really underrated player because he can bring some size, bring some strength, bring some set the edge to your defense, and provide some run defense and some beef for your team. So, he's had his moments as a pass rusher. I kind of feel like he's more in there to stop the run. I'm going to check out some of his PFF run stuff here. So looking at his run defense, he had a 74.7 run defense grade, which is a good grade overall. He also had 18 stops in the run game last year, which was 19th in the NFL. That's pretty good. When we look at 2023, let's see if it's even improved upon there. Let's see. He had 12. Okay, 12. So he actually had a better season this year in run defense, at least. But he had more sacks in previous seasons. This year was actually his highest grade, his second highest grade of his career, his highest run defense grade of his career, his second highest pass rush grade of his career. He had 30 pressures this season, 43 last year. So yeah, this is a good rotation player. I feel like he'll play important snaps for the Bills. He can complement like an AJ Epinesa and a Gregory Rousseau. So, yeah, interesting. I like these Bills signings. I feel like both of them can play a role. I do still feel like they need another really awesome receiver, which they don't have on their roster right now. I feel like they could use a safety. I feel like they could use some improvement with a stud defensive player that they don't currently have. But this was not going to be like a super crazy free agency for the Bills because basically their entire roster is back. I mean, they really don't have that many holes, and they're one of the best teams in football. So we'll see what they do in the rest of free agency. Okay, the Bills. Did anyone sign, guys? Why is only Kansas City fan talking in the chat, bro? Nobody else talking in the chat? '49ers have signed DeMarcus Robinson. I thought DeMarcus Robinson was on the Rams. I didn't think he was a free agent. That's interesting. He'll be their fourth receiver. The Niners have made a few moves today, some cheap ones. Could maybe talk about that. You want to talk about DeMarcus Robinson? Or should we wait in case Joey Bosa gets signed? Jason says, has Joey Bosa signed yet? No, he has not. Dark Nate says he's playing WWE 2K and listening. That's awesome, man. Thank you. Guys, don't forget to Gronk spike the like button. It helps the channel and the video. Make sure to like the video, guys. All right. We might talk about the Niners a little bit later. A lot of their signings are pretty minor. There was one big move that the Bucs made yesterday that I do want to talk about. We'll talk about DeMarcus Robinson after. I want to talk about Haason Reddick first. I didn't talk about him yesterday, and the Bucs haven't really done much otherwise, so I might as well just talk about him, I guess. They also signed a punter, so that's kind of interesting, I guess. We can talk a little bit about him. Your boy Haason Reddick, Big Al. Your boy. What are my favorite lowly spend free agents? You mean like a low cost free agent? That's a good question. Haven't really thought of that. I liked Isaiah Rodgers to the Vikings. That was one that stood out. I liked melifonwu to the Dolphins. Those were a couple that kind of stood out to me. Like very low end deals type deal. All right. Let's talk about Reddick for a sec. Okay. Did they not have him on here? He didn't really play last year, so. Okay. Let's talk about him. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers got a much-needed boost for their pass rush with Haason Reddick. A 1-year, $14 million deal with 12 guaranteed for Haason Reddick, a former top end of the NFL pass rushing specialist. That's exactly what they're going to get in Reddick at this stage in his career. He is 30 years old, turning 31 in September, 6'1", 240, a smaller style edge rusher. This is their new Shaq Barrett with the inability to play really in the run game on early downs, you would think. He's probably going to be more so of a third down, pass downs type specialist. But I love how he fits with Todd Bowles because he is very slippery, very quick, explosive, and those are the type of players that can slip through and be able to snake their way through in blitzing schemes. And Todd Bowles is absolutely iconic for his blitzing schemes. So he'll set up Haason Reddick with different ways of attacking the quarterback. When you look at Reddick, he basically sat out last year. You know, he did end up suiting up in 10 games for the Jets, but he never really played that much. So it's kind of hard to get a really good gauge. He didn't even play 400 snaps. You know, looking at his grading, he was like in the 102nd, according to his defensive grade last season, 102nd pass rush, 79th in run defense. Did not look like himself last year, but he didn't practice. He wasn't at training camp, right? He didn't take the Jets seriously. You wonder what his motivation was. There's a lot of questions about him there, okay? 4.5 speed, fast edge player, okay? Quick, twitchy. He's a linebacker that plays edge. The reason he plays edge is because he is so quick off the ball and he uses his hands really well and he's really good at setting up tackles. Now, in his prime, from 2020 through 2023 with the Eagles, the Cardinals, and the Panthers, he has put up 10-plus sacks on 3 different teams. 12.5 with Arizona, 11 with Carolina, 16 with Philadelphia in 2022, where he was a second-team All-Pro and 4th in Defensive Player of the Year voting, and 11 in 2023, a back-to-back Pro Bowler before last year with the Jets. So he was a Pro Bowler back-to-back seasons before last year. He had 5 forced fumbles in 2022, which led the NFL. He had 49 tackles that year. His high in tackles is actually 80 in 2018 when he was more of a linebacker in Arizona. Because when he was drafted pretty high, if I'm not mistaken. He was drafted pretty high. I want to say he was a first-round pick. He was 13th overall for Arizona. And he was a hybrid player. So people didn't really know, is he a linebacker? Is he an edge player? Where is he going to play? So they started him off playing linebacker. And that wasn't the correct decision, right? He didn't play poorly. He just didn't have the skill set for the coverage game. But he still put up some sacks. He put up some tackles, things like that. But he was better on the edge. Arizona first put him on the edge in 2020, where he had 12.5 sacks. Then eventually he broke out in Carolina, Philadelphia, etc. Right? So I could see him being a much-needed element for Tampa Bay, replacing Joe Tryon, essentially. Joe Tryon's been an absolute bust of a first-round pick for them. He was picked in 2021, I want to say, or 2020. Like, he was a first-round pick for them. Never worked out. Never was what they wanted as a finesse edge rusher to get to the quarterback to replace JPP, right? He never did that for them. Now it's Yaya Diaby, who's a dog. And you've got, of course, Kalijah Kancey, Vita Vea, Logan Hall on the inside. One of the best interior trios in football. Essentially, probably one of the absolute best interior duos with Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey. But on the edge, you've got a mixture of Yaya Diaby, Haason Reddick, Anthony Nelson. Anthony Nelson is the opposite of Haason Reddick. He's big, he's slow, but he's huge, and he's an edge setter. So those two could complement each other fairly well. I think the Bucs need a little bit of depth on their interior D-line. Greg Gaines and William Golston are both free agents. Linebacker, they could definitely use a little bit of depth. Maybe if Shaq wants to return to football, he could come back for another year as an edge player. They could use a safety, but I feel like the Bucs defense, this is an element. This is a player that they desperately needed to add. Like a guy that can get you 10 sacks. And I'm not sure if Reddick still has that in his bag. I'm willing to bet on it, though, and I love this move from Jason Licht. I feel like it's betting on upside for a guy that's now going to be motivated on a one-year deal. He's only 30, too. It's not like he's like 35. He's 30. So I think he still has some game left in him. They also signed a punter, Riley Dixon, from the Broncos. If anyone cares about punters at all, it's kind of interesting. Dixon is 31 years old. He has started 148 games in his NFL career. He has been in Denver since 2016. He's been a solid punter. Now, the one thing I'll say is he's punted in Denver, so it's much different to punt in Denver than pretty much every other place because of the altitude. So just throwing that out there, I don't have too much of a background. I don't recall, Riley Dixon being elite at punting the ball. I don't remember a season where he was like one of the best punters in the league, but he's been pretty solid as of late. Like the last 3 years, his best year was in 2022 where he had 48 yards per punt, but the last couple years, 46. He has punted more recently than he did early in his career for the Broncos, that's for sure. And he has not had a blocked punt since 2022. Also, his net yards per punt was also the second best of his career this year at 42. So, maybe a guy that's peaking a little bit there. So Riley Dixon, another little guy that you got to talk about, signed a 2-year deal to be the punter of the Bucs. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers also making some moves. All right. Bucs are done. What's up, Stem? How you doing, man? Thanks for joining. Says, greetings, Bottom Line View. I just pulled up. Long day at work. Hey, thank you for joining. Appreciate it. Guys, Gronk spiked the like button, man. I'm going to keep telling you, Gronk spiked the like button. It helps the channel. It helps more people find this video after the fact. So make sure to like the video if you enjoy what you're hearing and the analysis from me. If you hate it, just leave, bro. Jason is in the chat. What's up, Jason? Jason asked me about the free agents. Kenneth Gainwell signs with the Steelers. Okay. Thank you for that. Are you sad about that? So they got 2 little men in their backfield now? I've always liked Kenneth Gainwell. I think he's okay. Who's going to be Saquon's backup? Nobody? They don't need one, Big Al? What do you think? They don't need one? Just give Saquon more carries? All right, let's talk about the Jags. I didn't talk about the Jags yesterday. I want to talk about the Jags. And right after we talk about the Jags, we'll talk about DeMarcus Robinson and the 49ers moves, okay? But Jacksonville has made some interesting moves. Let me pull up all the different stuff. I especially love the Dyami Brown move. I should have brought that up earlier. Love the Dyami Brown. I'm a fan of Dyami Brown. They also have signed Jordan Lewis yesterday, the Dallas Cowboy cornerback, and Robert Hainsey, center for the Bucs. 3 players that I know really well, so pretty easy to talk about them. But let's just pull up some info. Let's go. Give Saquon more carries. Christian says, as a Steeler fan, I love it. Okay. Has Slay been officially signed yet, Christian? Because, I don't want to talk about it if he hasn't officially been signed. because I feel like he's just going to turn around and do something. Do something different. All right. Let's talk about the Jags. The Jacksonville Jags have been jumping at a chance to sign some underrated free agents. One at wide receiver, one at nickel corner, and another at center. A connection to their new head coach, Jason Light, Robert Hainsey at center. Don't think he's going to be the starter, but he provides very solid depth on the interior across all positions, playing guard and center in his days in Tampa Bay. Light is a receiver coach himself and has expertise in that area, which makes the Dyami Brown signing very interesting for 1 year, $10 million. And Jordan Lewis, a corner of the Cowboys, got a 3-year, $30 million deal to help out one of the worst secondaries in football last year. So where I want to start is their first signing. Duval. How did he say it? How did Liam Cohen say it? Duval. Jordan Lewis is the first one. He is a Detroit, Michigan native. Shout out to Big L in the chat. 5'10", 195. Jordan Lewis is 29. He will be 30 by the time the season kicks off. He has played a majority of his snaps in the slot throughout his career. Okay, 71 tackles last season was the most of his NFL career. Had 1 sack and 1 interception. Okay, according to Pro Football Reference, he allowed only an 85 passer rating in his coverage last year and a 5.2 yards per target and a 7.7 yards per completion. His 7.7 yards per completion was the second best of his career. His 5.2 yards per target was his second best of his career. And his passer rating of 85 was his third best of his career. But 85 is very solid. That's a very solid corner. 68% completion is kind of high. But being that he plays in the slot, it's expected to be higher than other positions. Lewis is more so a man coverage corner, in my opinion. I think he's got more of a man coverage skill set, more of a coverage skill set than a nickel that is more there for blitzing and tackling. Right, there's different dimensions of playing nickel corner. Sometimes teams like the guy that can tackle and blitz, and he's a little bit less in the coverage department, like Mike Hilton, for example. And sometimes teams like the man-to-man guy, like a Jonathan Jones from the Patriots, for example. So I would say that Jordan Lewis more so leans into the Jonathan Jones spectrum. PFF listed his coverage as 268 yak allowed in the slot, 569 yards allowed in the slot, which was third worst. But he had the 10th most amount of snaps. And again, being that he plays in the slot, it's kind of hard to know how, what exactly, because he plays in the middle of the field. So it's hard to know if he's actually being targeted. I will say that. His rating allowed, according to PFF, in the slot specifically, was 7th worst in the league. Yards per snap allowed was also 10th worst in the league. Okay, his snap per reception allowed was not bad, 27th best in the NFL. So that's interesting that his Pro Football Reference stuff and his Pro Football Focus stuff are so dissimilar. That being said, that's specifically in the slot. So I do wonder if maybe he did play a little bit on the outside. Maybe he played a little bit better on the outside. So I'm going to further examine that this year. Let's see. So his passer rating did go down overall. 7.6 ADOT that he allowed is really low. That's 22nd best in football. So, yeah, he's never been an amazing player, but he's a solid starter, and he's been a starter for a good secondary for many seasons. I think he definitely adds a bit of a floor to their secondary. When you're looking at Jacksonville's secondary now, they've got their number 1 corner in Campbell. Jordan Lewis is going to be their nickel most likely. And then they have Jerian Jones, who I'm not sure if they love or not. We'll see, but he's a young player. He was a 3rd-round pick last season, so we'll see what they think of him. So that's Jordan Lewis, solid starter at nickel corner. Now, the other signing that I'm excited about for Duval is Dyami Brown from the Commanders. 6 foot, 195 out of North Carolina. He's 25 years old, will be 26 in November. Had a somewhat breakout late season last year and a nice little playoff run for himself. 30 catches, 308 yards, and 1 touchdown last season. But previous to that, had not really done much in his career. 160, 140, 160, was buried on the depth chart in Washington as their 4th receiver. In the playoffs, he had almost as many yards in the playoffs alone as he did in the entire season. 14 catches on 18 targets for 229 yards, 16.4 yards per reception, and a touchdown. That's 76 yards per game in the 3 games in the playoffs that Dyami Brown played. I think what he brings to the table is speed. He is a vertical slot player, in my opinion, that can really run very fast. Was a 3rd-round pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. Looking at his PFF stuff, let's see where he graded this year. He graded as the 69th best receiver, which is a high-end number 3. That makes sense. I like his speed to complement Brian Thomas. That's going to give secondaries a lot of issues. I think he can play out wide or inside. 485 snaps out wide this past season, 137 in the slot. I specifically remember him against Tampa, though, in the playoffs, playing a lot in the inside. So I could see him playing either spot, to be honest. But he could be the number 2 receiver for Jacksonville. And I wouldn't be surprised. I like him more than Gabe Davis, personally. They're similar in terms of they both play on the outside and they're both vertical threats, but I like Dyami Brown more. I think he's got more to his game. Parker Washington could be their slot player, or maybe Jacksonville goes out and makes a move for like Cooper Kupp or something with familiarity with Liam Cohen. But I like the addition to the wide receiver room for sure, especially on the contract, 1 year, $10 million. He would have been a player I would have liked in New England. Eric Murray was another signing that they made. 3 years, $22.5 million, 12 guaranteed for Jacksonville. He's a safety. This is probably the signing I like the least out of all the signings they made. Eric Murray is not very good. I kind of feel like he's a backup safety, and he was like the worst. Now, maybe it makes him look bad because he was like the worst player on like the 2nd best defense in the league for the Texans. But previous to 2024, he had not really started since 2021. He had been in Houston since 2020, though. He had 75 tackles last year, only 1 interception. He did have 10 passes defensed, which was by far the most of his career. So I'll give him that credit. But he just, to me, like, he's more known for like being a coverage safety, but I don't think he's that good in coverage. So I don't know. Like, he was graded, I guess he was graded better than I guess my eye test would indicate. He was 54th in the NFL, which was actually better than Darnell Savage and Antonio Johnson on Jacksonville. He played 961 snaps. So maybe I'm underrating the guy a little bit. This was the best grade of his career, I believe. 33rd in coverage, 56th in run defense. So yeah, he's a little bit more so coverage guy, but he has some versatility. You know, he lined up 352 snaps in the box, 221 in the slot, and then 337 at free safety. Part of that is because the Texans run a lot of quarters. They run a lot of cover 4. So, you know, those safeties have to be active in the run game, active down the field, being able to cover. He's a 4-5 type speed guy. I think he's more, like, ideally, I think he's like a 3rd safety, but they signed him to be a starter, I think. We'll see how Darnell Savage plays this year, too. They gave him a starting caliber contract. I mean, $12 million guaranteed, 22.5. That's a starting caliber contract. We'll see. Maybe he proves me wrong. I wasn't a huge fan of him in Houston, but I feel like he's definitely been improving as a player. This year, you know, 10 passes defensed, 14 starts, 75 tackles. That's the 2nd most of his career. In the playoffs, you know, he played this year. He had an interception in the playoffs for a touchdown, 11 tackles. This could also come from inside the building because Liam Cohen, right, and the general manager is new. But they played Houston twice. So maybe there is some people in the Jacksonville building that really liked him when they played against him. So there is that. Now, the other signing that Jacksonville made was Robert Hainsey. 17 games this year, 17 starts. Or not 17 starts. He didn't play this year. Okay, he started in 2022 and 2023. That's why I'm reading it incorrectly. I'm like, he didn't play this year. He wasn't their starter this year. He got hurt this year. But he was the starter in Tampa in 2023 and in 2022. Now, what I will say is Hainsey is not a good run blocker, in my opinion, for my money. But as a pass blocker, he's kind of interesting. He's a weird one too, because he, I believe, was like drafted as I want to say he was drafted, thought of as like a tackle, and then he played center. It was kind of a weird thing. They picked him in the 3rd round out of Notre Dame. And I want to say he moved from tackle out of college to play center, and he ended up starting. He ended up starting for Tampa Bay in 2022 and 2023. He was replaced by Graham Barton in 2024. I think he's more of a pass blocker than he is a run blocker. Okay, Robert Hainsey. Just going to search this up and finish this off. Just to solidify my thoughts, he did get a contract, 3 years, $21 million, 13 guaranteed, which goes to show, I mean, he could start on this team. That's a good contract. Like, he could be their center. Luke Fortner was a player that was their center previously, not very good. Brandon Scherf, also a guy that they probably are going to let go. Patrick McCarry, they also signed. I didn't even think of that. I forgot about that. Might have to talk about that as well. But Robert Hainsey, so his grading, 73 last year, 81 in pass block, which was 4th best in the NFL. His run block was actually 10th. So that's a lot better than I would have thought. That is that 2024? That can't be 2024. Yo, this doesn't make any sense, bro. He only played 94 snaps. Okay. Bro, that's not right. 2023, he was 9th in overall grade, 4th in pass block, 10th. Okay, so that's 2023. All right. Yeah. So his 2023 grades were pretty good, according to PFF. 1,100 snaps played that season, 9 penalties, 4 sacks allowed, 73 overall grade, 81 pass block, 73 run block. In 2022, what's his grades? Give me the grades. He was 14th overall, 10th in pass block, 26th in run block in 2022. 2023, 47th in run block, 26th in pass block, 44th overall. So he had a rough 2023. That makes more sense. He only had 2 penalties, though. That makes much more sense, though, because he was not good in 2023. So, yeah, okay. That was a little confusing for you guys out there, but Hainsey, center, better pass blocker than run blocker, forced into a starting role after Ryan Jensen retired in Tampa Bay. Didn't give them the oomph they wanted in the run game. Wasn't a proper scheme fit. I think could be a better scheme fit in a zone system rather than a gap system, which he played in previously in his career in Tampa Bay, and is going to be their starter. Like, they gave him starting caliber money, has flashed a decent amount of production in his career. Now, I want to finish this. Thank you guys for the super chats. We'll get to it. Thank you guys so much. Finishing this video off, Patrick McCarry also signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm now talking about Jacksonville. Patrick McCarry was the starting guard for the Baltimore Ravens last year. Very versatile piece for their line. He signed a 3-year, $37.5 million contract, 39 max value, $20 million guaranteed. McCarry's a good player, especially in the run game. Has some versatility to play zone or gap. 6'4", 305. He is 27 years old, turning 28 in August. started 17 games in 2024. Really got his first chance to be a pure starter last year. He's I love this type of player. He's played left tackle, right tackle, center, guard. He's played every position on the offensive line, and he's played it at a pretty high level for the Baltimore Ravens, who have been one of the best offensive line evaluators in football, one of the best offensive lines in general in football. Okay, guys? So that's a really good pickup, in my opinion, Patrick Mekari. That really helps him at guard. I will say, though, he's replacing Brandon Scherff at right guard, according to their depth chart. So I'm not sure how much of an upgrade it is from Brandon Scherff, but this is clearly a player that's in his prime. That's definitely an upgrade from this age standpoint, because he's not that old, so that's nice. And he's in his prime, and he's only had 1 year where he's been a real starter. Last year, he was graded as the 51st best guard in football. His pass block was 71.6. His run block was 56. He played 1,131 snaps. In his career, 20th grade, 22nd grade, 52nd, 28th, 31st, 51st. So he was exposed to his most starting snaps, and he was 20th overall as a pass blocker. I think he's underrated. I think that ability to play any spot is huge. He was even like an extra tight end at times for the Ravens. So he brings the ultimate versatility to the Jacksonville Jags offensive line. So they signed Jordan Lewis, Dyami Brown, Eric Murray, Robert Hainsey, and Patrick Mekari. 5 players from today and yesterday that are going to help Jacksonville. I personally think I like the Mekari and Dyami Brown pickups the most. Hainsey's got some upside as a starter at center, but we've seen some shaky play from him in Tampa Bay. Eric Murray, not a huge fan of. Jordan Lewis is solid, but not much more. So that is the Jacksonville Jags. Okay. Now, what's up, chat? Shout out to Bodo with the super chats. $20. Big Al, congratulations on the championships. You guys kicked effing ass. Bodo, you're like a month late, bro. You're a month late. Shout out to Sarah in the chat. Shout out to Miles in the chat. What's up, man? We haven't gotten to the Texans trade yet. Was it just the one super chat or was there 2? Oh, okay, Bodo, can we get a quarterback or a coach? Shout out to Bodo. All right, let's check Twitter. Did Bosa sign with the Bills? I'm going to check that. Yes, he did. We'll talk about it right now. Hold on. Good move for Buffalo. That's exactly what they needed, man. Did anyone else sign? No, okay. So it's a 1 year, $12+ million, $12.6 million deal. Is there any other details on the deal? I wonder how much of it is like incentive based. Okay, 12 guaranteed with an upside of 15.6. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about it right now. Gronk spiked the like button, guys. Don't forget it. Gronk spiked the like button, man. I'm doing it right now, man. I'm doing it right now. All right. Joey Bosa. Wow, he didn't go to San Francisco, huh? The money must have been nice in Buffalo. I'll say that. Okay. Just pulling up the stats, guys. Hold on. We cool. We cool. All right. The Buffalo Bills have boosted the pass rush with a Bosa. Joey Bosa has signed with the Bills Mafia to a 1 year, $12 million guaranteed, $15.6 million deal. Joey Bosa could be the man that the Bills need to go over the top. Not only that, but Joey Bosa knows what it's like to sack Patrick Mahomes. Just going to throw that out there. All right. Joey Bosa has signed with the Bills. 6'5", 280. Former third overall pick in the 2016 NFL Draft. A multi-time Pro Bowler. A Pro Bowler of 5 times. 2017, 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2024. He has 72 career sacks. The last couple of years, injury-riddled. Only 5 games in 2022, 9 games in 2023, 14, a little bit better in 2024. And his production has certainly declined in terms of sacks. 5 sacks this season, 6.5 the year before, 2.5 the year before. That being said, he's played under Brandon Staley. He has played in a Raven, Mike McDonald-esque defense under this new Michigan regime in Los Angeles. And he has not played in a defense that's truly fit his skill set for quite some time. I would argue since 2021. And in Buffalo, I think it's much, much better for him in terms of his scheme fit. Just a straight 4-man rush, pin your ears back, get to the quarterback. Sean McDermott is going to love this guy. He's a well-rounded player, right? He can set the edge. He can get to the quarterback. I already really like their signing of Hoecht from the Rams, that big boy. Former D tackle turn linebacker turn edge player, add some depth to the team. Really good in run defense. Joey Bosa can do it all. But with Joey Bosa at this stage of his career where he's 30 years old, you got to have him in a bit of a rotation. And the Bills love to have a bit of a rotation. They love to have their depth. They love to have their multiple guys in. Now, he did have the most quarterback hits since 2021 with 13, according to Pro Football Reference. He graded this past season as the 72nd best edge rusher in football, which overly is not that impressive, but he was 39th in run defense, 59th in pass rush. In 2023 and 2022, 27th in 2023 when he did play. So in 2023, he only played 5 starts and 9 games. He had 6.5 sacks in 9 games, which is pretty good. That's pretty good numbers, right? So still recently, he's still put up some production. It's just that he's had to deal with these injuries constantly throughout his career. Now, can he stay healthy? Can the Bills keep him healthy for late in the season when they really need him? When they need him in the playoffs, when they need him to get to the quarterback, when they need him to make some plays, get a strip sack. You know, it's only a 1-year deal, right? This is not like signing Von Miller a few years ago where it's like you're paying the guy the bag and he's old and he could get hurt. Like, Bosa isn't that old quite yet. It's more so the injury stuff. And it's only a 1-year deal. It's a mercenary contract, right? So you look at Joey Bosa. In 2023, he had actually, a really good season. He had an 80.3 pass rush grade, 24 pressures in the 9 games, and an 89.9 pure pass rush grade, which was 12th in the NFL. His pass rush grade overall was 17th in the NFL. Okay? This past season, he had 39 pressures in 503 snaps, 6 sacks, 10 hits, 23 hurries, 18 stops. His peak, 72 pressures in 2019, 75 pressures in 2017, 49 stops in 2019. Really well-rounded. I mean, he's never been one of these guys that is just good as a pass rusher or just good as a run defender. I'd actually argue he might be better in run defense now than he is as a pass rusher, but that might have just been some of the stuff with the injuries. But he's a speed to power rusher, uses that his length well, uses his ability to just rip through tackles really well. He does got a good amount of bend. You do wonder if he still has that capability with the injuries he's had. But the thing is with his injuries is a lot of them have been like here or there. Like they haven't been major. Like he's never missed an entire year because he just tore his knee up. Like he's had like some injuries that are kind of just hurt him to be able to keep him on the field. But it's a huge addition, man. I mean, even he got to the Pro Bowl this year. I don't really know how, but he did get to the Pro Bowl. It's a huge addition though. Like, this is the guy they needed. Like, they needed a pass rusher. And it's not like he's got to be their best pass rusher, right? Like, Greg Rousseau is a dog. Like, he's paid as the number 1 pass rusher on this team. You put Joey Bosa opposite him as the number 2, and now we're talking. Instead of AJ Epinesa, who becomes more of a role player, as he should be. Mike Hoecht becomes a role player, as he should be. Ed Oliver can complement Bosa and Rousseau on the edge. Ed Oliver is a very good defensive tackle pass rusher. He dominated the AFC Championship, right? He was their best, most effective pass rusher against the Chiefs. So it was evident. Like, they, even with as bad as the Chiefs offensive line was in the AFC Championship, they couldn't dominate them. So they needed this type of guy. Hopefully he could just stay healthy and you can get a little bit of magic out of Joey Bosa. He's lost a bit of a step, but I just wonder how much of that has come down to the injuries and the wear and tear. I do think this system for him, where his hand's in the dirt and he's taken off, is much better in Buffalo than it was in Los Angeles, where he's more having to stand up and that sort of thing. So I definitely love this addition. I can't really say, even the money, like, who cares? It's $12 million guaranteed. It's 1 year. Okay, it is what it is. It's not hurting you long term. You're going for the Super Bowl. You're trying to win the whole damn thing. You're not trying to, like, who cares? You know, the money doesn't even matter. $12 million isn't even that much for, like, a good pass rusher. Like, those guys get upwards of $20 million. Like, Myles Garrett got 40. You know, Myles Garrett got 40. If Joey Bosa can give you 8 sacks on a $12 million contract, you'll be very, very happy about that. And, you know, I'm sure that there's the incentives. If he does play a certain amount of games, he'll get and earn more. Let's dive a little bit deeper into his numbers here. So he actually had his best game of the season in week 9 against the Jets. He had 3 sacks in one game with 6 pressures. That was in week 9 before he got hurt in week 11. So that's interesting to note. I will say that. He was starting to peak. He actually had 5 pressures against Chicago and then 6 pressures against the Jets. And his best grades in week 8 and week 9 against Chicago and the Jets. And then he got hurt. So that's kind of interesting too. Oh, that's in 2023. My bad. 2024. Actually, in 2024, he also was peaking at the end of the season, right? Because he did play in the playoffs. He played against Houston. He had a sack. He had 4 hurries. I don't really remember this, but he did. He had 5 pressures. He didn't grade very well. A 44 grade is not good, but he had 5 pressures, which is pretty good. He had a sack, which is pretty good. He had 4 hurries, which is pretty good. And he had 1 stop, which is pretty good. So he actually had 5 pressures, which was tied for the second most of his season in the last game of his season. And he finished his year with 3 pressures, 3 pressures, 3 pressures, 5 pressures, and 2 sacks in the last 4 games, 3 sacks in the last 6 games. He had his best game of the year against Cincinnati with 8 pressures and 5 hits. He did not get a sack, though. The season started slow for him, though. He only really had, like, up until week 10, where he was on and off with injury, he actually managed to play week 10 through the wild card without missing a game. That's good. But in week 3 and week 8, when he was injured and then coming back from injury, he didn't have a single pressure. Week 2 against Carolina, he only had 1 pressure. It resulted in a sack. The first 2 games of the year, he had 2 sacks, actually. But he didn't put up many pressures or hurries. And so he never really got going until week 11. So that's interesting. Anything else here that's interesting? I'm just kind of looking at his stats. 2 forced fumbles. He did have 8 penalties, but only 1 of them, I guess, were accepted. Let's see. 67.4 run defense grade was the highest grade that he had out of any category. His tackle grade took a big hit. He had a 15.4 miss percentage on the tackles, But I will say for a defensive end, you're not usually tackling guys. It's usually kind of awkward. So those missed tackle percentages can be kind of misleading because it could be him diving or something. Like, I don't really know what they would evaluate. So, yeah, Joey Bosa, though, overall, I still think he can play. I'm not saying he's a top 10 edge rusher in football anymore, like he used to be, but he's still a good player when he does play, productive player when he does play, a sack specialist when he does play, and they've got a nice little rotation build here. 4 edge rushers that I like. 4 different edge rushers, right? Rousseau, great athlete, speed rusher, good length, good power, all-around defensive end 1. Joey Bosa, savvy vet, proven sack artist. When he's on the field, will be productive, and an all-around edge player. Mike Hoecht is a specialist against the run, big body, can play inside, outside, can stand up. AJ Epinesa, really savvy, good athlete, really smart, and plays well in that system. So I like the build. I like the room. I like Bosa in Buffalo. That's it, boys. That's it. Joey Bosa. I kind of wanted him to go San Francisco, but it's all good. It's all good. The Penguins won. Why are they winning, Bodo? What are they doing? They should be trying to lose, bro. All right. Who do we want to talk about next? I got a lot of little minor things here that I can keep for other times. Like, okay, so Titans, Rams, Raiders, Panthers are all kind of minor. Browns are minor. Chiefs signed Christian Fulton. That's kind of major, I guess. We got to talk about the Eagles and the Texans. That's something I want to talk about. Commies signed Will Harris. I don't really care too much about that right now. That's like some of these smaller signings I like to include with other signings, like having like 2 or 3 guys in the video. The Vikings, we definitely have to talk about the Vikings. The Cardinals. Okay. Let's see. Some of this stuff here. Okay. I'm just sorting this out, guys, right now. Comey signed 2 players. So that will move up. Morris wants the Texans. What's up, Morris? Okay, we'll do Texans, Eagles next for you guys. Solomon Thomas, the Cowboys. 49ers had a bunch of minor moves. Steelers. I'm still waiting for Slay with the Steelers. I don't know what's going on with that. The Dolphins signed a couple players. Falcons signed a couple players. So next we're going to do Texans, Eagles. We're going to do Vikings. Then we're going to do Giants for sure. And then we'll see after that. Maybe a few more after that. Okay. So let's do the trade next. All right. Let's just pull up the stats. If you guys haven't already, Gronk, spike the like button, subscribe. Don't be a jabroni. Don't be a jabroni or else I will send Bodo for you. And trust me, you don't want Bodo to knock on your door. That guy's got long hair. He's about 7 feet tall. He's cane. You don't want him coming to your door, bro. So make sure you subscribe. All right. Oh, really? That's interesting, Steven. Is that real? Is that like right now that happened? Let me check. I didn't see a tweet about that. Dallas Goedert. I didn't see that. But we'll see if it happens. All right, let's do Eagles Texans. The Philadelphia Eagles are moving on from CJ Gardner-Johnson again. And honestly, I hate it. I think the Texans just got one of my favorite, feistiest safeties in the NFL. And man, the Texans might have the best defense in football in 2025 if it wasn't already in 2024. Because they just took a guy from the best defense and put him on their defense. His name is CJ Gardner-Johnson. But people are wondering, oh, did Howie Roseman just steal a former first-round pick guard, Kenyon Green? Well, we'll talk about it in this video, guys. We'll talk about it, okay? It's Green and a 2026 fifth rounder for CJ Gardner-Johnson, CJGJ, which is one of the most difficult things to say in my life, and a 2026 sixth round pick. So I'll say that again. Green and a fifth for CJGJ and a 2026 sixth round pick. Understood? Okay. Now, first things first. I don't like this trade for the Eagles. I felt like CJ was a great part of the Eagles both in 2022 and 2024. I don't think it's a coincidence that in 2022 and 2024, they had really good defenses when he was on their team, when he was playing free safety for them. And in 2023, they fell apart. They fell apart without him. I don't really think that that's a coincidence, okay? I also think that Kenyon Green is certifiably booty cheek. But if anybody can make him better than booty, it might just be the Philadelphia Eagles, who took Mekhi Becton from the scrap heap and made him something. Now, that being said, Mekhi Becton had looked good in the NFL in other stops with the Jets. He could not stay slim, and he could not stay healthy. That was his problem. But if we're looking at Kenyon Green, he was the 76th graded guard in the NFL this year. 76th. He had a 38.6 PFF grade, which was just slightly higher than Bodo Winter. He had a 39.7 pass block grade. That is pathetic. The year before, it's not like he was good as a rookie. He was 77th. And if you guys ever watched the Texans, you would understand that every single team would just line up their best pass rusher where Kenyon Green was and attack the left guard. If you were watching the Bottom Line View this year, you would hear me say, they're just going to run over the left guard. They're just going to pass rush the left guard. It got so bad they had to bench the boy. So yeah, he's young. He's 6'4", 323. He's got specimen size and power. He's a 15th overall pick. Now, the Texans' offensive line, is it the best coached in the league? No. Is the Eagles? Yes. So, could there be something there? Potentially. He's got a lot of capability. He's got a lot of power. He's got a lot of inherent strengths and traits. Okay? He's only 23. He's turning 24 in 4 days. So, happy birthday, Kenyon. Now, I'm not trying to take shots at you, but bro, you have been absolutely terrible. Terrible. So for anyone to trade for you is mind-boggling. That being said, this also is, I think, an indication that Mekhi Becton's not returning, because Mekhi Becton's going to get a lot of money on the open market, hopefully by the New England Patriots, but we'll see. I will also say that CJ Gardner-Johnson, he's 27, turning 28, not until December. He's actually younger than I thought. I thought he would be a little bit older. He's also a pick specialist. I understand that CJ is a little out there. He's a little wild. I mean, just to speak to it, he tried to trade himself on Madden as soon as it happened. He went on live on Instagram and he started going on Madden and trying to trade himself to the Texans on Instagram Live. So that goes to show his personality. But he has literally had 6 interceptions with the Eagles in both seasons that he played with the Eagles. He led the NFL in interceptions in 2022, and he had 6, and that was only in 12 games. And he had 6 more picks in 2024. Now, one downside to CJ is his size and is his ability to stay healthy. He did get hurt in 2023 with the Lions. Remember, they signed him after his great season to a 1-year contract, and he got hurt. He only played 3 games for the Lions. He did have 1 interception in 3 games, all right? He's a ball hawk. He can pick the ball off. He can make plays in the backfield, right? But he's 5'11", 210, and he plays a fierce style and he plays a fearless style, which sometimes leads to injuries, right? He has missed games in 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons in his career. He's played 16 in 2019 and 16 in 2024. I wouldn't even say he missed a game last year because that's not really fair to him. He had 59 tackles last year, which was the 3rd most of his career. He also got great versatility. He can play in the slot where he played in New Orleans as a feisty man coverage player, and he can play at free safety where he is a ball hawk as a free safety roaming the field, okay? He's got good man coverage skills, good zone coverage skills. He's a big hitter, but I wouldn't say he's a consistent tackler. He can lay a big hit, but he's not a guy that I feel like every single time will make a good tackle. Like sometimes you'll see him making a business decision like he did previously in his career. But you look at his grading, so let's pull up his grading. I love his feistiness. I love his attitude. I love his energy. I love all that about him. He was the 13th graded safety according to PFF this year, playing 1,170 snaps. He was 5th in coverage, 86.8. That's really, really good, right? And even this is the best graded season of his career, according to PFF. His run defense grade was not good, though, 76. So if there is a weakness to him, it's run defense and it's tackling. Right? I think his coverage is much better because he's a slot corner / free safety. That's what he is. He's a hybrid player. He's kind of like a Tyrann Mathieu, right? He's kind of like a Tyrann Mathieu type. He's a little bit undersized, so that doesn't help him against run, but he will make a big hit every once in a while. He played 805 snaps at free safety, 243 in the box, 112 in the slot. Sometimes he played so far back that you wouldn't even see him on the screen. That's kind of like Vic Fangio's defense, right? And there are some similarities between DeMeco Ryans and Vic Fangio, their usage of 2 safeties, their usage of quarters defenses. There's definitely a lot of similarities there in terms of their match cover 4 system. So that's where I feel like CJ will fit at home as their free safety. This is also a great move for the Texans because it's the biggest hole on their defense. Like if you were to look at their defense previously, we brought up Eric Murray earlier to the Jags. This fulfills a huge weakness for them, right? So they got Kalen Bullock and they've got CJ Gardner-Johnson now at safety, along with potentially Jimmy Ward if they keep him or they don't. That's a good trio of safeties. That's really nice, okay? Derek Stingley is an absolute stud of a corner. Kamari Lassiter was excellent last year. Jalen Petrie returns to the nickel position where he was really good. And then they've got great linebackers, 3 good linebackers. They've got really good defensive ends. Anderson and Hunter is one of the best combos in football. They re-signed Derek Barnett. Their only holes remaining is defensive tackle. They've got to figure out defensive tackle. They did re-sign Mario Edwards, which I like. He's a good pass rusher. But yeah, they need a defensive tackle. Otherwise, this is one of the best defenses in football, and they just solved one of their biggest needs where teams would attack their safeties quite often. And you won't be able to do that with CJ. Whether he is lining up as a tight end stopper, a slot receiver stopper, or he's lining up as a free safety, I feel like he'll be effective for this defense for DeMeco. And he brings an attitude that DeMeco, I think, will be able to rein in, but also be able to get the most of. So far, I mean, the Texans O-line, I don't know what the heck they're doing. They did sign Lincoln Tomlinson, who is a veteran player who played for the Niners with DeMeco Ryans when he was there for Kyle Shanahan's offense, and a 1-year, $4.25 million deal. He's a former Lion, former Niner, former Jet, former Seahawk. He has not played well recently, Lincoln Tomlinson, but he used to be a really good player. So he's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. There's at least that. He's not a rookie that has no idea what he's doing. I will say that. He's not Kenyon Green, who can be left out to lunch sometimes. He's 32, turning 33. He's got a ton of experience. He's played 163 NFL games. He was a Pro Bowler in 2021 with the 49ers. He has played very consistently. He's healthy. 16, 16, 15, 16, 16, 16, 17, 17, 17, 17 games. He has started every single season of his career, and he has only missed one game in his entire career, which is insane. So shout out to him. I do think he's declined, though, as a player, as a mover, as a talent. But like I said, he has so much experience, which is something that is needed. He did actually grade better last year for Seattle. He was 44th in the NFL. So that's not bad. You know, in previous seasons, he was at 53 and 58. His peak was in 2020 and 2021 with the 49ers, as he was the 8th and 13th graded guard in football. But he played 1,094 snaps last year and was graded 44th. This is a good value add based on his experience, based on his plethora of systems played in, based on it's only $5 million for 1 year for a guard that's played as much as him and actually played pretty well last year, pass blocking wise, 34th in the NFL. So yeah, that's a great pickup. That's an upgrade. They just traded Kenyon Green. That's an upgrade to Laken Tomlinson. Now, Eagles fans are probably hating on this right now. They're saying, what the heck are you talking about, bro? The thing is, Kenyon Green has sucked. He needs coaching. He needs refinement. He's a first-round pick. He's got upside. He's massive. He can move. He's got traits, but he needs refinement. He needs coaching. So we'll see if he can get that in Philadelphia. There's nothing else I can really say other than he sucked. Like, that's honestly my assessment. He was awful. Okay, that's all I can really say. Maybe he's a depth piece for Philly. Maybe he's a developmental project for Philly, right? Maybe he's their starter. Maybe he's their backup left guard behind Tyler Steen if Mekhi Becton gets released or just leaves, right? But if Green maybe does start, can they get the most out of him with some good coaching? But I love what the Texans have done here with the trade for their biggest defensive hole and for Laken Tomlinson, who's a savvy veteran who can fulfill one of their needs. Now, the Texans really need to work on the O-line. I think a lot of that will be addressed in the draft. But the question will be, can their coaching upgrade it? These are all guys. They're starting O-line right now from right to left. Titus Howard has played okay throughout his career. Juice Scruggs is a second-round pick in 2023. Jared Patterson is their center, sixth-round pick in 2023. Laken Tomlinson at left guard. Blake Fisher at left tackle, second-round pick in 2024. Fisher played terrible in his first year, but can he get some coaching and development? Juice Scruggs has played up and down. Can he get some development? Titus Howard, he's solid. Laken Tomlinson, he's solid, right? So they probably need a couple draft picks at that spot, maybe a first-round pick, but they need coaching more than anything on the offensive line. That's really what's been killing them, in my opinion. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Eagles, Texans, and the crazy trade. That was really random, but also pretty interesting. All right. Steven says, go Birds. Texans are really good in every place but the O-line, though, which is tough. Didn't Hargrave sign with the Vikings, or am I crazy? Was he just visiting the Vikings? No, he signed. That's where I want to go next, because the Vikings made a lot of moves today. They signed Hargrave pending his release. They signed Ryan Kelly, Will Freeze, Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, and Isaiah Rodgers. I need the Isaiah Rodgers. Morris says Texans got 4 picks in the top 90, though, so they could definitely spend a lot on the O-line. They definitely will. Trust me. They definitely will. Rodgers was 2 years, 15 million. Okay. Got it. SG in the chat says, keep pounding. What's up, brother? What do you think? Panthers. Hey, we got 50 people in the chat. Shout out to you, jabronis. Gronk spiked the like button. Don't forget to subscribe, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're rocking free agency right now, man. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the chat. If you want to hear about anything in specific, let me know. Okay? We're going to the Vikings now. I'm pulling up all the stuff. The Vikings are fucking stacked. Sorry for my French. They are loaded. They are absolutely loaded. If they had like a quarterback, I would be all over this team. I would say they would win the Super Bowl, bro. I'm not even lying. This team is ridiculous. We're going to go over this team. Pay too much. Pay too much. Thoughts on the Panthers upgrading the D-line? I made a whole video about that, bro. I liked most of their moves. I wish they would get like an absolute stud. I will say that. I wish DJ Reid. I could do DJ Reid. I don't think I talked about DJ Reid, did I? Yesterday? I could do DJ Reid for you later. I like it. I wouldn't say I love it. I like it. He's replacing Carlton Davis, so pretty similar player. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later. I think I forgot to do that yesterday, so I'll talk about that later. That's really the only move the Lions have made, right? I'm not mistaken. Haven't done anything else. Okay. Minnesota. Why is... Oh, right. He got hurt. Will Freeze. It's Will Freeze, right? It's not Fry. It's not Fries. Imagine your name was Fries. All right. The Minnesota Vikings are absolutely for real. Wow. What a free agency so far. This might be my favorite free agency so far. They have signed stud after stud after stud. 2 Indianapolis Colts to the interior offensive line. Welcome, Ryan Kelly. Welcome, Will Freeze. Welcome, Jonathan Allen to the defensive tackle position. And Javon Hargrave. Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen beside Grenard and Thor himself, Andrew Van Ginkel, in a Brian Flores defense? Forget about it. And Isaiah Rodgers might have been my favorite signing of all of them. We're going to break it down right here. Let's talk about it. First of all, let's talk about the offensive line. Ryan Kelly has been one of the best centers in football for a while. Since he entered the NFL out of Alabama, he's a former first-round pick, 18th overall in the 2016 NFL Draft. Since day one, good football player, 6'4", 307. His problem throughout his career has been conkies. The conkies and the injuries, okay? He has 4 Pro Bowls on his resume. As of late, he's had some injuries, but not too bad. Like last year, he played 10 games. The year before that, 14. The year before that, 17, 14, 15, 16, 12. Okay, so he misses a couple games a year. But when he's out there, he's a top 10 center in the NFL. Like solidified top 10 center in the NFL. No problems, no questions asked. And he is much better than Garrett Bradbury. Garrett Bradbury, I don't know why they signed him. I don't know why they thought he could be something he's not. He is not good at football. All right, he's not good at football. He's never been good at football in the NFL. Okay, he was good in college. He got drafted in the first round. Congratulations. Ryan Kelly, 1,139 snaps, 11th graded center last year. Now, for comparison, Garrett Bradbury, 29th graded center last year. Okay, so you're going from or 27th, sorry. So you're going 16 spots better to Ryan Kelly at 11. Now, Ryan Kelly only played 601 snaps. Garrett Bradbury played those 1,191. I think I reversed that when I talked about it at first. But you're vastly improving your pass protection. Garrett Bradbury had a 50.5 pass blocking grade, while Ryan Kelly had a 71.9, right? And that feels about right in the eye test. If you watched the Vikings last year, you would see at the end of the year, the interior pressure became a problem for them. And they needed a center that could hold. They needed a center that could anchor in the middle of their line. And they constantly got penetrated right up the middle of their offensive line, right? So in 2023, 8th was Ryan Kelly on center. Let me just read the grades for you guys. 2016, his rookie year, 20th. 2017, 31st, not very good. 2018, 10th. 2019, 8th. 2020, 13th. 2021, poor, 32nd. 2022, 16th. So since 2022, 16, 8, and 11th. Pass blocking, 5th. He is an elite pass blocker, all right? So Ryan Kelly, really good player, really good pickup if he stays healthy. He's 31, turning 32 in May. A little bit older, but for a center, I'm not that concerned. Center, I don't really care if you're 25, okay? So, yeah, big-time pickup, big-time addition for the interior. Now, you complement him with Will Freeze, also a underrated name from the Colts, another Colt. He's a little younger, though. He has a lot less experience. He is 26, turning 27 in April. He is a former 7th round pick. Good find by the Colts. This year, he only played 5 games. So if there is concern about their pickups, it's the injuries these guys have had. But sometimes those can be really good pickups because they're undervalued based on their inability to play in one season. But in the previous seasons, 2022, 2023, he's been a starter at guard, right guard specifically, opposite Quentin Nelson on their offensive line. This year, he was having a breakout season, which is why I bring it up, okay? This year, his grade was through the roof in the games that he did play. In the games that he did play, he was right up there. 86.9 grade, 84.9 run block grade, and a 74.9 pass block. So just to put that, he would have been 4th in the NFL. In his 268 snaps, he had the 4th best grade among all guards. In the last couple of years, he was 32nd, and 50th. So he moved from 50th to 32nd to 4th. So that was the progression of his game, being a 7th round pick in 2021. So he has progressed throughout his years in the NFL. And he's 6'6", 305. Tall guard. A really tall guard. But I think he probably has a tackle background. I'm not too familiar. Yes, he does. So he has a former tackle background. That makes sense. He's 6'6". So that also leads you to being a better pass protector a lot of the times. So that's what they were looking for. Interior pass protection for their young quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, for the future. So Ryan Kelly, Will Freeze, 2 Colts to the Vikings to help their interior, all right? Now, interior on the other side needed some help. Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave are going to play on the outside of Harrison Phillips. Good luck, NFL. Javon Hargrave has declined as a player. He's not what he used to be. He's 32. He's a former Steeler, Niner, and Eagle. His peak was with the Eagles in 2022. He had 11 sacks with the Eagles in 17 games, had 60 tackles, and was a force for that team and that defense, that all-time sack-setting defense. He also had 7 sacks on either side of that season with Philly and San Francisco, where he was a 2-time Pro Bowler. His concern about his game is run defense. I don't think he's a great run defender, but I actually like him in this system with Flores because he'll rather be on a 4-man line, I should say, not run, 4-man line, right? So if it's a nickel formation, 4-man, he'll be there, right, as a pass rusher on pass sets. Or they could go to a 5-man line where pressure is being taken off of them in rundowns, Okay, so more of what he used to do with Pittsburgh. He actually was a bit of a nose tackle in Pittsburgh in his first few seasons before kind of transitioning to more of a defensive tackle role, right? So the nose tackle plays right over the center. Defensive tackle shades the center to either side. So it'll be interesting to see how you use him because he has the versatility of doing both, although he's been more of a defensive tackle ever since 2020. So, yeah, I think Hargrave is still a good player. He can get after the quarterback. He can sack the quarterback. He's not the best run defender, in my opinion. Did he even play? Like, I think he played early in the year and he went down, if I'm not mistaken. Because I'm trying to remember, like, he played really early in the season. Then he got hurt. So he played 104 snaps. Yeah, he didn't play very much at all. But yeah, he had a 60.6 grade, which isn't great, but his pass rush grade was still 73.3. His run defense, 44.7, right? So that's a really bad run defense grade. Really good pass rush grade. The years previous, 24th in 2023, 11th in 2022. With the Steelers, 2017 through 2019, he had some really good seasons. 9th in 2019, 20th in 2018. So, yeah, 6'2", 304. A little bit undersized, like height-wise, I guess, but nah, it's not, like, not really. So Hargrave is a good pickup, more of the pass rusher. Jonathan Allen is just a dog. I don't think he really has any weaknesses. 6'3", 300 pounds, one of my favorite defensive linemen in football over the last, 7 years. Another Alabama player. First round, 17th overall in 2017. Did not have his best season last year due to injury. Only played 8 games, had 3 sacks, 19 tackles. But before that, had never really missed a game. He played 16 games, 16 games, 17 games, 16 games, 15 games, 16 games. As a rookie, he only played 5 games. But he's been one of the better pass rushing D tackles in football pretty consistently. He peaked with 9 sacks in 2021, 2-time Pro Bowler in 2021 and 2022. Those were his peak seasons. Okay? He was also on the one Commander team that made the playoffs previous to this one with the 2020 season. But in the playoffs, he started all 3 games. He played all 3 games. He's declined a bit. He's not at his peak anymore. He graded as the 70th best defensive tackle. Last year, he was 65th in terms of grading. His run defense also was pretty poor according to the grade at 114th. His pass rush was 32nd. I do wonder, again, Allen has mostly played, he's played a little bit of both, but he's mostly played in 4-3 type systems. Hargrave's kind of played in both. I'm not really sure, where he like in a traditional 3-4, he'd play the end. In a 4-3, he'd play D tackle. I kind of, so in a 5-man front, he would play like the 5 tech. And in a 4-3, he would be the 3 tech. But I could see him playing in a rotation if they're going to play, like a lot of teams play mostly nickel. So Allen, I could see Hargrave and Phillips rotating while Allen is like the guy that plays most of the snaps. That would probably be my guess. That would be my guess, but they could rotate all of them. Allen was 18th graded in 2020, 3rd overall in 2021, and 11th in 2022. Last season, checking out some of the pressure stats, we'll go into that, and we'll look at Hargrave, we'll look at Allen. Does anyone know what his injury was? Was it an ACL? I'm pretty sure it was an ACL. So that's obviously something you've got to take into account. Hargrave, I'm not sure what the contract was. Allen was 3 years, $60 million. Will Freeze was 5 years, $88 million. Young player, so that does make sense for the 5 years, but that's a lot of money. Ryan Kelly, 2 years, $18 million is a bargain, and we'll get to Isaiah Rodgers, I also think is a bargain. I think Hargrave tore his ACL, but I could be wrong. So last year, Allen had 26 pressures in 250 pass snaps. He had 3 sacks, 6 hits, 6.3 PRP, a 10.4 win percentage. So 10.4 win percentage would be 41st. His PRP of 6.3 pass rushing productivity would be 25th. That's pretty good. Pressures, though, the injuries definitely hurt him. So it's kind of hard to say that he played at his best this past season at 2024. 2023 is really where you can look at both of these players. Oh, he tore his tricep. Okay. That's interesting. That's probably not as bad as an ACL, but that does have to do with your leverage and your upper body, so you have to build that strength back up. So that's interesting for a defensive tackle. Thank you guys for that. Appreciate it. Last year, in 2023, Hargrave had the 8th most pressures in football with 64, and Jonathan Allen had the 17th most with 49. And then in terms of, run defense, I would say Allen's better than Hargrave. Hargrave is probably the slightly better pass rusher. Now, to finish it off with Isaiah Rodgers, who was the 4th corner for the Eagles Super Bowl champion defense last year. He's also been a very underrated player in Indianapolis, another Indianapolis player, okay? Played 9 starts in Indy in 2022 and was pretty good in that system. Had actually 4 fumble recoveries in that year. 3 passes defensed, 1 forced fumble, 34 tackles. That's a really weird stat. Last year, he did not have an interception. He had 3 interceptions in 2021. Last year when he played, he allowed an 82 passer rating, a 4.2 yards per target, only 13 completions on 28 attempts, which was 46% completion percentage. It's very good numbers. He's underrated, I think. He's got good size, decent size, a little bit undersized in terms of his weight. He's only 170 pounds. He's 27, turning 28. He already turned 27, so he was in January. So he's not turning 28 this year, so not until next year. So he's only a real 27. 2 years, $15 million. Was the guy that would go into the game for Darius Slay when Darius Slay went down. Teams would try to pick on him with not a lot of success. Looking at his grading from last year and the previous season, Isaiah Rodgers was 24th in the NFL, according to PFF, at corner, 421 snaps as a backup. He had an 83.4 run defense grade, actually, which was elite last season, 31st in coverage grade. He has never had a bad grade in his career. Through 4 seasons, 2022, he was the 5th graded corner in football. 2021, he was 25th. And in 2020, he had an 85.6 rating, but he didn't get graded because he didn't play enough snaps. So he's never been graded poorly. He's a wide corner. Played for Massachusetts, the Minutemen, in college. That's interesting. 6th round pick in 2020. So he's had to earn his way. But I like Rodgers. Like I said, great grading, good stuff so far. We'll see if he plays a bigger role. I could see him starting on the Vikings as a wide corner. Gilmore's a free agent. Shaq Griffin's a free agent. They don't really have another one of those right now. They just got Rodgers, Byron Murphy. So Byron Murphy will probably play nickel. So those are the Viking signings. Fantastic stuff from them today. Awesome day for them. I think they've had a really good free agency so far. Okay. Someone signed. Roy Lopez signed with the Lions. There we go. We can add somebody to our DJ Reid conversation just in time. Perfect. How's everybody doing? We enjoying the show? Gronk spike the like button, homies. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't make me sick Bodo on ya. Where do I think Amari Cooper and Diggs go? Oh, boy. Diggs to Dallas or Cooper to Dallas. One of them will go to Dallas. And the other one will go to the New England Patriots, baby. Let's go! All right, let's put up DJ Reed. I need his contract. Three years, 48. Okay. Okay. Lions. Ravens Pro says, welcome to Baltimore, D-Hop. I broke that down right at the start of the show, brother. Thank you for tuning in, man. All right. Okay, DJ Reed. The Detroit Lions have decided to not pay Carlton Davis and find a replacement in the New York Jet corner, DJ Reed. A little undersized, but he's a kamikaze. He's feisty. He's going to bite your kneecap, and he's going to tear it off. He likes to play press coverage. He likes to get in your face and talk a little smack. 5'9", 188. But he's got the heart of a lion. He's 28 years old. He's turning 29 in November. November 11th, actually. And for the Jets, he's been one of the best corners in football. Especially one of the best number 2 corners in football alongside Sauce Gardner. This is a guy that's never had a bad season in his life. According to PFF, his worst grade is his rookie season in San Francisco as the 55th best corner in football. After that, he earned a 75.1 in 2019 as a member of San Francisco. 2020, 14th best corner in football. 2021, 8th. 2022, 23rd. 2023, 16th. 2024, 31st. So a little bit of a downgrade this past season. He is getting a little bit older, but not really a bad player in any way, shape, or form. 803 in terms of his wide cornerback snaps. He is a wide corner, not a nickel corner, despite his undersized 5'9" frame. He 32nd in coverage, 30th in run defense. No real weakness to his game in that regard because he is physical, he is feisty, and he will tackle you. He can play man coverage if the Lions choose to do that. He has also played in that Seattle Robert Saleh scheme as a cover 3 player, cover 3 press bail type of technique in that system as well. Like I said, I think his peak is as a CB2. If he has another corner beside him, he's excellent. That's where I think he is worse than Carlton Davis, because Carlton Davis has been deployed as a CB1 his entire career, while DJ Reed has been a CB2. So that's the difference for me. That's why his grading might be a little bit better than someone like Carlton Davis, or a little bit more consistent than somebody like Carlton Davis. That being said, though, he's very, very good. He gets his hands on the football. 10 passes defense in 2021, 12 in 2022, 9 in 2023, 2024, 11. Okay, not a lot of interceptions, though. Only 6 in his entire career. According to Pro Football Reference, he's allowed pretty consistently an 80 passer rating, 81, 81, 87 these past 3 years, 75 and 67 in 2020 and 2021 with Seattle. And, he's been listed as a defensive back with San Francisco, where he began his career as a nickel because of his size. Then he transitioned to Seattle under Pete Carroll, where he played right corner. Then he transitioned to the Jets, left corner. So he can play both sides. Mostly, always on the outside. Completion percentage has always been good for him, though. He doesn't allow a lot of completions. 57% this past year, 58% the year before. Anything under 60 is phenomenal. 47 at 2021 with the Seattle Seahawks. So he's played for different teams, but the same system. So my question would be, how does he play in a new system? Because Detroit is not similar to San Francisco, Seattle, or New York. Those teams had Pete Carroll. Those teams had Robert Saleh. They had Robert Saleh. So basically, he's been in the same system. So I do wonder if he's playing more man and less zone. Although he's good at man and press, I feel like it will be a change for him in some way, shape, or form. But that being said, his competitiveness should shine in that manner. And I do kind of like that they're going with this Amik Robertson, DJ Reed. They're undersized, but they're feisty and they're quick as hell. And they can really cover route runners really effectively. So they got DJ Reed, they got Amik Robertson, they got Terrion Arnold, who's a Mr. Hold. But I like their secondary. I think this is a good replacement for Carlton Davis. And if anything, he might be a little bit worse in terms of the high-end ability. He's a little bit more consistent, and he doesn't get hurt quite as much. He does miss a couple of games every once in a while. Every corner does. But he's a little bit more healthy. So, and they're about the same age. So it's not even really like a huge age difference. But I think it's a good deal too. In comparison to the money that the other guys got, 3 years, $48 million. I think partly because he's been a CB2, partly because of his age and his size, he might have not got as much money as some of the others. But that's the reasoning behind it. Roy Lopez was also signed like right now by the Lions as I'm making this. He signed a 1-year, $4.65 million contract. He is a run stuffer from the Cardinals, 6'2", 318, rotation player, right? 16 games played this year, 16 starts though, 1 sack. He's not a pass rusher at all. He's a big defensive tackle that stuffs the run. Looking at his grading, nothing fantastic. He's never graded very well in his career. This past year, a 54.9. He's had 18 pressures, 15 pressures, and 19 pressures the last 3 years. His peak was 24 stops in 2023 as the Cardinal D tackle. These guys, though, that are mostly run defenders don't typically grade that well because they're just eating up space and not trying to penetrate the quarterback or the pocket. So it's hard to grade because their goal is not necessarily to get to the quarterback. I could see him being kind of like the insurance for DJ Reader. I think that's what he is. He's not a Liam McNeil insurance. I think he is DJ Reader run stuffer insurance in case he gets hurt. That's kind of what I think he is, like the 3rd or 4th defensive tackle. So that's the Lions. DJ Reed and big boy Roy Lopez. All right. The G-Men. Harris says Texans won the draft best special teams unit in football. What's up, Harris? How you doing, bro? Guys, if you haven't liked the video, make sure to like the video. We're trying to get 50 by the time I go off air. We're going to do the Giants. Javon Holland. And Roy Robertson Harris. Web of Music says, man, if we sign Kupp, another O-lineman, and draft Travis Hunter, this is about to get savage. I assume you're talking about the Patriots? Yeah. It's going to get savage, sir. $2 years, $10 million. That's a pretty good deal. Okay. Pull up the G-Men. Meep. Meep's on the offseason. I didn't know Meep knew about the offseason. I thought Meep was in hibernation during the offseason. Thanks, SOS. Love you, man. I want Cup to come to the Pats, baby. Come on down, boy. Come on down, boy. All right. Let's go, Mr. Javon Holland, Coquitlam, British Columbia. All right. The New York G-Men had a secondary problem in 2024. But in 2025, they have now signed the best safety on the market in his prime. Fresh out of Coquitlam, British Columbia, my guy, Javon Holland. 6'1", 205-pound Javon Holland. He is only 25 years old. Just turned 25, by the way. He's 25 years old. He already hit free agency, and he will be a rich man. 3 years, $45 million. Now, Giants fans have been a little bit concerned about letting walk McKinney to the Packers, who was arguably the best safety in football. I'm sorry, last year. But Holland will be a nice little prize for your tiers last year, okay? He's an excellent player. I love his style of play. He combines a rare speed, a rare dimension of range, and physicality. So he brings a punch, he brings a pop, but he also can really run. He's one of the fastest safeties in football. He was a second-round pick, 36th overall by Brian Flores in 2021 in the Miami Dolphins, okay? He's played 4 seasons with the Dolphins. This year, he played only 15 games. He had 62 tackles, 1 sack, 2 quarterback hits. I feel like he was better in Flores' defense than he was in this past defense. But he had 2 interceptions in his first 2 seasons in his career. He had multiple sacks in his first 2 years. He actually had 10 passes defense as a rookie. And in coverage, he allowed an 89 passer rating this year and a 54% completion percentage, which is very good for a safety. Looking at his grading, I don't necessarily agree. 56th grade this year. Last year, he was 3rd in the NFL. As a rookie, he was 4th. So he's had 2 years where they've graded him exceptionally, elite, and 2 years where he's been just solid, 40th and 56th. This year, he graded better as a run defender, 31st out of 93. His coverage did suffer with 65th out of 96, but I just said his completion percentage was pretty good. Most of his snaps, 434 free safety snaps, box snaps, 235. I feel like he can get away and play both, but I feel like primarily he is best as a free safety because he has unique range and speed, and he has the ability to diagnose the pass and fly to the football and hit you, or pick a pass off, or tip a pass, okay? Holland, I feel like in Bowen's defense, the Titans, Mike Vrabel, Brian Flores, this is a good fit, in my opinion, from that perspective. I think the free safety has always been very important to that defense. Think Kevin Byard, previously in Tennessee, ball hawk, rangy safety that can cover a lot of ground. He is an Oregon Duck formerly, and I feel like he's a really good fit for the Giants. I think he fixes a lot of things that they had go wrong last year. A lot of deep balls, a lot of passes down the field. Holland will cover that up, and along with Paulson Adebo, which I broke down already, love that signing for you guys. He's going to be an excellent CB1 when he's healthy. You've got 2 young, fresh, good players out of free agency in your secondary to complement the rest of your secondary. Tyler Nubin, the second-round pick out of Minnesota, I believe, last year. I think it was Minnesota. Good player, talented, smart player. He's going to be much better as a strong safety to complement Holland. Drew Phillips from the nickel position, who was absolutely fire for you guys last year. So Deonte Banks still needs a little bit of development. Maybe he's not it, but he'll definitely be better as a CB2. So I really love Holland in New York. I think that's going to be a great place for him. Shout out to him and shout out to Coquitlam, British Columbia. Roy Robertson Harris. I actually, believe it or not, guys, I went to a running camp with him. He's 4 years younger than me, but I actually ran against his brother. His brother played football with my buddy. Shout out to Chase. Holland. I know the Hollands. I went to their running camp. Just a little history. Roy Robertson Harris. All right. One of my favorite guys in the NFL. You guys know I love Roy Robertson Harris. He's been one of those underrated players. 6'5", absolute behemoth human beings, 290 pounds. But he looks like he's like 6'10" when you watch him play. He had a really good 2023, but he fell off in 2024. Now, he only played 6 games in Jacksonville in 2024. He had 11 pressures in those 6 games in a new defense, which he did not fit well. Then he went to Seattle, and he never really got a chance to shine or play. So really, I think the Giants are getting a great deal here on Roy Robertson Harris on a 1 year, I believe it's 2 years, $10 million. That's a great contract, considering he didn't really get a chance to shine in Seattle or Jacksonville due to the scheme change. And in 2023, he had 42 pressures, 4 sacks, 6 hits, and 32 hurries, and 13 stops. He's a well-rounded player. I think he can rush the quarterback and mess plays up, and he can also defend the run. I think he's a better D lineman 2 rather than a D lineman 1, if that makes sense. So he'll be really good at complementing a guy like Dexter Lawrence. He'll be really good at complementing him. Last year was actually the most pressures of his NFL career in 2023. The year previous, it was also an uptick. 2021, 2022, 2023, an uptick. Now, maybe he fell off a bit because he is getting a little bit older. So there's a possibility there. But, he's 31, turning 32 in July. But as like a second or third defensive lineman, he's excellent. I also think he fits the system if they're going to play. He could play a 5-tech role. I feel like he could play a little bit of nose tackle, but that's going to be Dexter Lawrence. So as an end, I think he's pretty good in that role, or even as their second guy in the interior on passing snaps and passing downs and sub packages. Roy Robertson Harris will be great in those situations too. So I think this is a great pickup. I love the build right now. I think the Giants defense is actually drastically better on paper by signing Chauncey Golston, Roy Robertson Harris, Paulson Adebo, and Javon Holland. 4 starters, honestly. Like, Golston is kind of like the third edge rusher, but Roy Robertson Harris will start. Paulson Adebo will start. Javon Holland will start. They need to figure out quarterback, but honestly, their defense has gotten a lot better this offseason, so I like what they've done there. All right. The G-Men. We've got the Falcons signing Diablo and Leonard Floyd. The Dolphins signing melifonwu, Westbrook-Ikhine. Maybe we could do a couple more. What do we think? I'm going to leave the Steelers because of Slay. I'm waiting on Slay. So we'll do 3 more, guys. What do you think? Let me know your questions in the chat. I'm thinking we'll do the Falcons, the Dolphins, and the Niners. And we'll leave the rest probably. Let's see. We could do the Chiefs if there's Chiefs fans in here. We could do Christian Fulton if you want. Or we could wait. All right. But we've been live for like 2 hours plus. So we'll do 3 more. Gronk spike the like button, guys. Don't forget to subscribe or I'll send Bodo. All right. Let's rock. Let's pull up Diablo and Leonard Floyd. Seahawks. What's up, Spencer? How you doing, bro? Thanks for tuning in. Seahawks didn't do anything today, did they? Okay. All right. The Atlanta Falcons have found Leonard Floyd to boost their pass rush and their front seven, along with Diablo from the Las Vegas Raiders to potentially compete for some snaps at linebacker. Two interesting players, one with connections, obviously, to Raheem Morris, and one that I feel could be seen as underrated. Diablo signed a 2-year, $14 million deal, $8 million in year one, which kind of signifies he's going to get a good opportunity to play for the Falcons in year one. Was a starting linebacker for the Raiders the last couple of years, while Leonard Floyd signed a 1-year, $10 million deal. Leonard Floyd was the starting defensive end on the opposite side of Nick Bosa last year. This is a volume player. The thing that you love about Leonard Floyd is his motor. It's absolutely relentless and it's consistent. This is a guy that's had 7 sacks in his career. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Last year, he had 8.5 sacks for the 49ers on the opposite side of Nick Bosa, 16 quarterback hits. The year previous, 10.5 with Buffalo, 19 quarterback hits. The year before, in Los Angeles with Raheem Morris, 22 quarterback hits, which is the most of his career. The year before that, in Los Angeles, 9.5, 18 quarterback hits. Again, in Los Angeles with Raheem Morris, 10.5, the most sacks of his career, tied with Buffalo, 19 quarterback hits. Now, the sacks for him are a little misleading last year. I didn't think he was great last year. I thought that he was more so volume over efficiency. Last season, he did not grade very well. He was 102nd, according to PFF. And he also, just as a pass rusher, he put up some sacks. He got home occasionally, but he played a lot of plays. He played 604 snaps. In the last 2 years, his grade has been 86th and 102nd. So he's definitely declined, right? Before, he was like a really good player, like a top 32 edge rusher in football by many. But these last couple of years, like last year with the Bills, he was really good in a rotation and he got a lot of sacks. This year, he benefited from playing with Nick Bosa and the Niners defensive front and system, which inherently helps you put up pressure. But he had only the 100th pass rush grade and the 90th run defense grade. He is, in my opinion, a little bit better against the run, but he is a little undersized at 240 pounds. I think he's always been a bit better standing up on the edge as an outside linebacker rather than an in hand in the dirt defensive end, because he is a little undersized from a weight perspective, but he is tall, right? He's tall and he has long arms, but he's a little bit undersized. Okay. That's where he was drafted to play in the first round. I believe in the first round. Yeah, first round, 9th overall by Chicago in 2016. He was drafted to be a 3-4 outside linebacker back in that day, 2016, 7 sacks. And then I think he kind of had to find his role. He's mostly been an outside linebacker. He played for Brandon Staley's system in Los Angeles, has been with Brandon Staley a lot of his career. Then he followed him to San Francisco, played for Sean McDermott with his hand in the dirt. That's where he thrived the most as a defensive end. But I feel like he's kind of been better as an outside linebacker, which is kind of like what he'll play, that style he'll play in Atlanta. So that's useful. He also had a good coverage grade this year, 75.4, which shows he can still move a little bit in space. But I would not expect him to be a great, like, if you're looking for him to be your best sack artist this year, your best pass rusher this year, I think that's not a good start because I think he's more of a compliment. He's a little bit older at this point. He's 32, turning 33 in September. So he's a little old, right? But I feel like he can still get it done in starting snaps. He's got a relentless motor. Everybody talks very highly of his work ethic. He's that type of guy. He's that type of player, okay? Looking a little bit deeper into Leonard Floyd. This past season, he had 44 pressures. He actually ended the season with 0 pressures in his last 3 games, which is not very good. His best games were against New England, Seattle, and Seattle. So he really played well against Seattle. I went to one of those games. He had a sack in one of those games. Nice. Also, okay, he was actually listed on PFF with 11 sacks and not 8.5. Had 44 pressures, which was in line with last year's 45. Played a similar amount of snaps. Had 26 hurries this year, 25 hurries last year. Had 25 stops this year, 21 stops last year. His best pressure season was with the Rams with 73 pressures in 2021 when he played on the opposite side of Von Miller and with Aaron Donald. He played his best in Los Angeles, in my opinion, 54 pressures in 2022, 55 pressures in 2020. Had 13 and 14 sacks in 2020 and 2021, including the playoffs, I believe. Yeah. Really good character guy. Really good locker room guy. Really good motor. Really good practice player. Good compliment as a pass rusher. Better as a number 2 pass rusher throughout his career than a number 1. But certainly can still help a team. Had a pretty hot market, according to many sources, because he got cut today and signed today. So that goes to show people like him. Right? So they need more with their pass rush, but he'll certainly contribute. He'll certainly help, and he's good in this system. That's for sure. Now, the other player they signed was Divine Deablo, one of the best names in football. 6'3", 223. He's got really good speed, 26 years old. 3rd-round pick from, I believe, the John Gruden regime, if I'm not mistaken, in 2021. Started 15 and 14 games last 2 years, had 106 tackles in 2023 and a sack. Had 63 tackles and a sack this year. So his tackles went down significantly, but still played quite a few starting snaps. Now, I don't think he's a great player from anything I've really seen. I think he's a guy that is probably more so like a 3rd linebacker on a good team, but he could be a 2nd in a pinch. Like, he's played a lot of snaps lately. 689 this year for the Raiders. He graded 64th. Now, I think where he helps the Falcons is he's fast, and he would be a good complement to Troy Anderson and Caden Ellis. I think he would be like, if Troy Anderson struggles with injuries, he could be a guy that replaces him because he's really athletic. That's kind of how I look at him. His 64th grade this year, 59th last year, 56th the year before. He's kind of solid, nothing special, you know? He's a little undersized at 223 pounds. 477 snaps in the box, 158 on the line. Not much of a pass rusher. More of a space player, coverage player. Not a sack guy, not a pressure guy, not a blitzer. Okay? So, yeah. That's Divine Deablo. That's Leonard Floyd. That's the Atlanta Falcons. Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. Would I rather have Diggs or Kupp? Oh, man. I think I'd rather have Kupp because I think his personality. I prefer him. He's easier to cheer for, and he's not coming off an injury. So I think I'd rather have Kupp, but Diggs might be better. Like, Diggs was better last year, in my opinion. Okay, the Dolphins. What are we doing on the chat right now? We're 1 like away from 50, guys. Thank you guys for sticking around and listening to me blabber. Appreciate it. and Ashton Davis. We're going to talk about the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins. Hey, thank you for the likes, homies. Miami Dolphins. They're not number one. All right. Okay. The Miami Dolphins are going bargain hunting. They have signed 3 players today on the second day of free agency. Melifonwu, a player that I like from Detroit. I think he could start for the Dolphins. He's an interesting gem of a find. Ashton Davis from the Jets, who they're very familiar with, playing against the Jets in that division. Robert Saleh left, so his players leaving as well. Miami scoops him up at safety. 2 safeties. They definitely get more athletic at that position. We're going to talk about that. And then Mr. Touchdown himself, providing aura to the receiver room, is Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. All he does is score touchdowns. He got a 2-year, $6.5 million contract, 3.2 guaranteed. Melifonwu got a 1-year, $4 million. And Davis got a finalizing of the deal. I don't know the contract as of right now, but I'm not thinking it's very much. Now, let's start with Ashton Davis. He has been in the NFL for a minute. Always been an interesting player, 6'1". He was a 3rd-round pick in 2020. Played 15 games this year, but only 1 start. It's been primarily a backup special teamer. Had 37 tackles last year, 35 tackles this year. He did have 3 picks in 2023, 2 picks in 2024. And he's managed 8 interceptions despite not being a pure starter. He did start in 2021 with 62 tackles and 2 picks, 10 games out of 13 in 2021 when the Jets were not a very good team. But he did start that season, okay? So he has had at least some starting experience. Looking at his grading, he only played 260 snaps, but he actually had a 71 grade. Which is pretty good. 2021, the year that he started, he was 57th graded. And he played primarily, he played a little bit of both, box and free safety this past year. Okay. He's got pretty good size overall, pretty good athlete overall. Not a lot of experience as of late, but he's like a situational role player. His passer ratings allowed are impressive, 66 this year and 33 last year in the limited sample size. The year that he did start, though, he allowed 123 passer ratings, so that's probably the reason he didn't. But this might be a player that kind of early in his career, he was looked at as maybe a potential starter, but then kind of dropped off, became a role player, became a depth player, and then eventually maybe he could play some more later in his career. So I don't mind this pickup. You know, the Dolphins are going bargain hunting, trying to find players that can complement their secondary. They don't have a lot of cap space, so this type of move makes sense. As does Melifonwu, 6'3", 210, which first of all stands out. He can run. He's 25 years old. He turns 26 in May. I liked Melifonwu, especially in 2023 with Detroit. He had 2 interceptions. He had 8 passes defense and a forced fumble and 3 sacks and 33 tackles. He came on really well at the end of last season with Detroit. And I'm talking about 2023 when they went to the NFC Championship, not when they lost as the first seed in the playoffs. He allowed a 61 passer rating that year and a 90 this year. This past season, he was more of a depth player for them. Last year, he was like their 3rd safety. This year, he only managed 178 snaps. There was players playing in front of him for whatever reason. But I think he showcased enough in the 2023 campaign to give him a shot to play strong safety in that system. Good size, good speed, good profile, good athlete, and has a little bit of ball production in his history. So enough there to covet a contract from Detroit. Only played 3 games this year. So, okay, yeah, so that makes more sense why he didn't play that much. But was expected to be their 3rd safety. Got his job taken. we didn't really see much from him after that. So that's kind of disappointing because in 2023, I thought he was really good. So Detroit ended up having one of the best combos at safety in football with Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. And then they used Amik Robertson as an extra defensive back. And I kind of wonder if that would have happened anyways. But yeah, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine had 9 touchdowns last year, was a fantasy pickup for many. 98-yard long last year, which was tied for the most in the NFL, or the longest touchdown in the NFL last year. 497 yards. He's been like a number 3 receiver in his career for Tennessee. 476 yards in 2021 was his peak, when he did play a little bit as a number 2 to A.J. Brown with 4 touchdowns. Okay, he had 32 catches this year. He had 60 targets. He played as a number 2. After DeAndre Hopkins got traded, he was their number 2 receiver in Tennessee. I think he's a nice complement to what they have in Miami as a bigger receiver. 6'2", 211. Gives them a bigger body, a red zone threat, a guy that they can put in the slot and can catch the ball in tight, confined space. I like the pickup because I like the production as of late. I've always kind of liked the player, and I feel like as a depth receiver, he's a solid option. Miami didn't have a lot of depth at wide receiver, but beyond Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they didn't really have a lot. He graded as the 83rd best receiver last year, 63rd in 2021, those being his 2 best seasons of his career. 606 snaps out wide last year, 164 in the slot. Can play some wide snaps as well, which also allows you to potentially move Tyreek or Waddle into the slot on occasion, which is also nice. So those are the Miami Dolphins signings. A few different gems for them. We'll see if they work out. Okay, shout out to Darnell in the chat, man. Thank you so much for the super chat, bro. He says, I love how the Raiders are still underdogs in a weak, overrated division. Why y'all still glazing the Chiefs? I'm not glazing the Chiefs. Darnell, you know who I am? I don't glaze the Chiefs, bro. If anything, I'm a Chief hater. Despise the Chiefs. I actually think the Chiefs have gotten worse. I do think the Chiefs are better than the Raiders. I'm sorry. But I need to see the Raiders do some more, bro. The Eric Stokes pickup is kind of interesting. He's got some upside. We'll see if he works out. They need to sign some secondary players, bro. Should we finish with the 49ers? They made like 4 signings, but they're all kind of like nobody really knows who they are, other than DeMarcus Robinson. Is Big Al still in here? Sarah says, I like your moves for the Pats too. Really love the Milton Williams. Thank you so much, Sarah. Yeah, I love them too. I think our defense is going to be legit, so I'm really excited about that. But we need some offense. Wide receiver, tackle. We need some offense. Need some offense. Okay, we'll finish with the Niners because they did have a ton of moves. So we'll do the Niners and we'll be out. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been a long day again of free agency. Tomorrow, for whatever I didn't cover. So if your team only signed like 1 player, I didn't cover it because like I like to cover like 3 or 4 at the same time. So I'll just add that to the list of tomorrow. All right. But let's look at the 49ers signings. So they signed Richie Grant, safety from the Falcons. They signed Pinnock, safety from the Giants. I think it's Pinnock, not Pinnock, but I don't know. Gifford is a special teamer. Luke Farrell is a blocking tight end. DeMarcus Robinson is interesting. Okay. Pull up safety. Darnell, what's up, man? Sarah says, my Colts have signed 5 players so far. Brought back 2 of them. Yeah, I talked about... Who did I talk about? I talked about the last couple yesterday. I talked about Daniel Jones. Who else did they... Are you including the re-signings? Let me see who they signed, if I missed anybody. So I talked about the 3 guys they signed. They probably re-signed some players, but yeah, I talked about Daniel Jones, Cameron Bynum, Charvarius Ward. Yeah, I talked about those. I made videos for them, actually. Go check that out, Sarah, if you haven't already. You probably have, but okay. Let's go. Let's finish this. All right. The San Francisco 49ers are taking a lot of heat from their fan base right now because they're letting all their iconic players walk. See ya, Debo. Bye. Kyle Hoecht. We don't want your wife's cool shirts anymore. Huh. Who cares about that? Javon Hargrave. See you later. Dre Greenlaw. We don't want to sign you. Hufunga. Talanoa. We don't want you either. I don't care if you have Troy Polamalu's hair. Aaron Banks, you can have that contract. But 49ers, they've been losing a lot of pieces. So they had to make up for it somehow. They have signed a bunch of players today, none of them being household names. One of them standing out, his name is DeMarcus Robinson, wide receiver that they know very well from the Los Angeles Rams, also a former Kansas City Chief, who they faced in a Super Bowl. Now, that being said, I like DeMarcus Robinson. I think he's a great depth receiver. This past year, he had his best NFL season. 31 catches, 505 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He will be the 4th receiver for the 49ers in 2025. You would think, unless they trade Brandon Ayuk, in which case he would be the 3rd receiver. But I think he's an upgrade over whatever they had previously, like Chris Connolly, like that type of player, right? Like that's kind of been their 4th or 5th receiver type. Robinson's drastically better than those guys, in my opinion. He has 7 touchdowns this year, 16.3 yards per catch. He also provides a deep threat, really good with Stafford down the field, had a great connection in that regard. Pretty good speed. He's not like electric, but pretty good speed, pretty good size, 6'1", really good understanding of zone coverages, really nuanced player, having played with Andy Reid and Sean McVay in those systems, having played with Patrick Mahomes and Matthew Stafford. He's got a very good feel, and I think he just always seemingly makes big catches. Like, this is a guy that's just kind of clutch, makes big catches in big moments of games. 2 years, $9.5 million, $6 million guaranteed. And if they do decide to trade Brandon Ayuk, I think this is a move that allows them a little versatility within that if they want to do that. I'm just throwing that out there. But even if there's an injury, let's say an injury to Brandon Ayuk, an injury to Ricky Pearsall, an injury to Jawan Jennings, DeMarcus Robinson can provide a starting caliber player as your 4th receiver in that mix. So that's really the value he brings. That's what he did for the Rams. That's what he did for the Chiefs, is if there was a guy that went down, man, put in DeMarcus Robinson, you're good, right? He's their new Jawan Jennings. He's their new Kendrick Bourne. He's their new, next man up mentality type of guy. He's a little bit older than those guys at that point, but he's a pretty good guy. He's a pretty good player, and I think he's a nice little ad for them. I don't think he'll play a ton unless there's injuries, but I do feel, and it will be interesting. Maybe they want to go to more spread. Maybe they want more 4 receivers, right? They did cut their fullback. So I do kind of wonder, are they going to be a more 4 receiver spread 11 personnel team? That's intriguing. So you got to throw that out there. But Robinson was the 75th graded receiver in football, which is like a solid 3rd receiver. Last year in 2023, he was 51st. So yeah, he's coming off some good seasons with the Rams. Now, they also made some other signings. The one that I like the most is Jason Pinnock, I believe is how you pronounce his name. It might be Pinnock or something, but I've been a fan of his in New York. He's only 25. He turns 26 in June, but he has played starting snaps, starting games. He's been a starter for the Giants the last 2 years, okay? He had 2 picks in 2023. And he also had the most yards in interception returns in 2023. He had 2 sacks in 2023 and 3 sacks in 2024 and 85 tackles in both seasons. I like him as a depth safety. I think he was a little bit miscast as a starter in New York, but I think as a 3rd or 4th safety, he's a good signing. with the ability to have a lot of starting snaps. Like, he's played a lot of football, right? So that's good. He graded as the 78th best safety in football, and his best grade happened to be as a pass rusher. He actually had the highest grade among all safeties in the NFL as a pass rusher this past season. It's a very unique skill. 59.5 run defense grade, not great. Coverage grade was worse. But maybe they could look at him as a box safety and maybe use his dimension a little bit as a pass rusher. Last year, he actually graded as the 43rd best safety in 2023. So I think he's kind of underrated because he's kind of shown a bit of a range, ability to be a guy that's, intercepting passes and returning them for touchdowns, a guy that's getting sacks, a guy that's pass rushing and blitzing, a guy that's doing a lot of different things. So I actually really like that pickup for only a 1-year deal. He's a playmaker. He also has 5 forced fumbles in 3 seasons. So that's pretty good too. Now, Richie Grant is another safety they signed who is an Atlanta Falcon, former Atlanta Falcon. He is 27, turning 28 in November, former second-round pick. He played in this type of system before, had 3 sacks in 2023, 103 tackles. In 2022, 123 tackles. I think he's kind of underrated too. I mean, I like both of these additions. He wasn't a starter this year with Raheem Morris becoming their head coach. But something tells me that Shanahan liked his tape when they faced him on defense, because I feel like he's, 123 tackles in a season is pretty solid. This year, he didn't play much, only 163 snaps, but 2022, he had a good season, 51st. He is more of a free safety than a strong safety. And like I said, former second-round pick. He's never really... last year, he had a 97 passer rating allowed. 2022, 87 passer rating allowed. So, I guess they look at it as Pinnock could be their backup strong safety. Grant could be their backup free safety. That might be how they're looking at it right there. And then they also signed a key special teamer in Luke Gifford, who's one of the best special teams aces in football. Special teams for 49ers was awful last year. They needed improvement, so it's a good signing. Luke Farrell is a really good blocker at tight end. That might be the replacement for Kyle Juszczyk. They gave him 3 years, $20 million. So the ability to use multi-tight end formations is certainly going to be there for San Francisco. But they also have the dimension of adding DeMarcus Robinson for 3 or 4 receiver sets. Farrell was the 49th graded tight end last year, which is pretty solid. He had an 82.6 pass block grade, a 61.9 run block grade as well. He does not have much experience as a pass catcher, though. He is basically a blocker. He has 36 catches in his career, and I'm not sure how much he's played at fullback, but I wonder if that's a possibility. 6'5", 250 pounds. Pretty big boy. Those are the 49ers signings from day 2 of free agency, and that's how I'm going to wrap up today. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been a long one. Appreciate everybody. We'll be back for day 3 to recap everything that I haven't already discussed. It's Mitch. Love you in the chat. Shout out to Sarah, Darnell for the super chat, Big Al, Bodo for the super chat, Spencer, Harris, Director, Caesar, all you guys, Reek Gotti, Brandon, Meep, SOS. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's Mitch. Gronk spike the like button, subscribe, don't be a jabroni, and check out the Discord, guys. Join the Discord if you haven't already. The link for the Discord is in every video that I make, just so you know. Peace.